Good evening, everyone. Please be seated. Welcome to this evening's meeting. We will start off the meeting with the evacuation procedure. A fire drill is not expected, so if the alarm sounds, please evacuate the building quickly and calmly. Please use the stairs and do not use the lifts. Once out of the building, please gather outside the Yorkshire Bank on the opposite side of the road. Please exit by the door by which you entered the room or by the fire exits, which are clearly indicated by the standard green fire exit signs. If you need any assistance in evacuating the building, please make yourself known to a member of staff. Please also make sure all your mobile phones are turned off or set to silent. Item 2 is apologies for the meeting. Do we have any apologies, please? Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. Fiance has been rushed into hospital, so he wanted to be here, but obviously he has other priorities.
Okay, please give our best. Sorry, Councillor Troman.
Councillor Brindley Edwards, as you know, she's a chair of sixth form and has been detained at an Ofsted meeting.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Item 3 is filming. All members are requested to turn on their microphones before speaking, to speak clearly into the microphone in front of them, and remember to turn it off when they have finished speaking. A microphone will be provided for members of the public to use who have notified that they wish to speak. Item 4, minutes, to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 11th of September 2019. But I have to point out that Councillor Evans did point out an error in the draft minutes of the meeting held on the 11th of September 2019 in regards to minute CL33, bracket A, on page 46, Overview and Scrutiny Guide 2019. Councillor Michaela Rudkin seconded the motion, not Councillor Evans as printed. The minutes have therefore been amended to point out that error. So, do I have? Can I propose that the minutes are accepted as a true record?
Seconded.
Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll sign them in a minute. Item 5, which is declarations of interest. We do have the declarations of interest printed in the agenda. Does anyone have any points they wish to make or to raise anything else? No? Okay, thank you. Agenda item 6 are the announcements. You will see down there on the table a gold award that has been awarded to the Armed Forces Covenant. And I think that we should give our sincere congratulations to the Armed Forces Covenant, for the, especially to the Armed Forces, for the excellent work they do in this borough. I'm sure everyone in this room would agree with our doing that. I do feel obliged to remind members this evening that this is a meeting of Nuneaton and Bedworth Borough Council, and I am not expecting it to be a hustings meeting for the general election. So we move to public questions, which is item 7. And the first question is from Mr. Lee Downs. Mr. Downs, please.
Madam Mayor, thank you. Can the council inform me why the Nuneaton and Bedworth Borough Council have changed the planning portal on their website, which stops anyone from seeing maps, layouts and planning information? Can you please tell me how, without these, I can respond to planning applications? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Councillor Phillips?
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much, Christmas. I will be able to respond in a second because I've lost the paperwork that I did earlier. But there you go. We have instigated a new system. Oh, it's falling out of my bag. Would you bear with me a moment? Thank you very much. You don't want to turn the film off. Oh, Merry Christmas. I can't find it. Basically, the situation is that we instigated put in a new system, right? And firstly, apologies for any resident that's had trouble getting on. The situation was, it's very technical, and I don't have that, but basically the old system, right, the Microsoft system, had to be replaced and updated. The basic error, well not error, the basic problem was that old application forms, right, prior to the changeover, have had to, before they go on the new system, had to be redacted and checked and then put on the new system. So anyone that was looking at old application forms had a problem whereby they weren't able at that particular time to look at maps, plannings, environmental concerns, etc., etc. What we plan to do, and what we have done, and any new applications, there isn't a problem. There isn't a problem. I went in there the other day, and even an IT duffer like myself was able to find what I was looking for and information. What we've got to do is make sure that old applications that may be coming forward to planning committee are updated. That's a lot of work because we've got to redact them, we've got to transfer them over. We won't be going back, Madam Mayor, to the old system. We won't be going back to the old system. The new system works well. What we've got to make sure that people, residents, can get hold of the information that they need. Planning officers, you know, if someone can't find what they want, planning officers will be able to ring up and sort of say, I need the information on this planning application or whatever, and then we will redact all the information and transfer it over. There is a button on the system that sort of says old things, but we have so many planning applications, right, that need to be updated to the new system. It is a safer system. We have had to change because Microsoft and the IT that we used was not going to be safe going forward. So it's a pain in the neck. I know it's been a pain in the neck, but we will make sure that any applications that are going forward to planning committee are up to date well in advance of them going there so residents can have a look at them. So off the top of my head, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Evans, could you tell me what your point of order is, please?
It is my right, in accordance with the Council's constitution, to refer this matter to the internal overview and scrutiny panel. That is within my rights to do. I have submitted a work scrutiny programme form, but actually if we can agree here tonight to send it to the next internal OSP, I think that would be far better. As a 21-year-old millennial, not even I can work
Councillor
the system.
Evans, I'm
so
not actually point of order that you are making. Could you advise me, please, Mr. Richardson?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. It's not a point of order. However, what Councillor Evans is saying is correct, that within the Constitution there is provision for questions from the public to be referred to an appropriate panel or committee. So if I can just find the relevant bit, I'll read it out to you, and just for the sake of the meeting. In paragraph 4.9.8 of the Constitution, it says reference of questions to the Cabinet or a committee, and it says unless the Mayor decides otherwise, no discussion will take place on any question, but any member may move that a matter raised by a question be referred to the Cabinet or the appropriate committee. Once seconded, such a motion will be voted on without discussion. So I think what Councillor Evans is seeking to do is to have that matter moved, I don't know which committee, but to a committee for consideration. It will need seconding, and then at that point, Madam Mayor, you can then take a vote on the matter.
Thank you. Thank you. So, having received that advice, Councillor Evans, which way would you prefer it?
for once, agree with the advice given by Director Richardson on this matter. Yes, I would like it to go to the Internal Overview and Scrutiny Panel so we can scrutinise this new system. And if I could just carry on what I was just saying just for 10 seconds, as a 21-year-old millennial who is fairly good with ICT, not even I can use the system. And I think it's unfair on residents if they can't see maps and layouts.
Okay. Councillor Evans, thank you. Your second to the vote. All those in favour of that proposal, please show. Thank you. That is unanimous. Thank you, Councillor Evans. Mrs. Condacore, sorry.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have had some great events in the Borough this year, including the recent events for the George Eliot Bicentenary. Attendance has, however, been variable and seems to be directly related to the amount of publicity. As only a small proportion of people get a local newspaper or use social media, what steps are being taken to ensure that the efforts of those organising the events are rewarded by good publicity and hence good attendance? Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Condacore. Councillor Lloyd.
Be myself answering this question. We have indeed had a number of excellent events across the borough during 2019, catering for a wide range of tastes and interests. Many of these have been delivered directly by the council, while for others we have played a supporting role to the event organisers. Some of the events have had an appeal to a wide range of people, while others have been aimed at a more niche potential audience, and so it is inevitable that attendance levels will differ between various events. However, it is clearly important that the Borough Council plays its part in ensuring the advertising and publicity. We need to make sure it is as effective as it can be within the available resources we have. In terms of this, we are continually assessing how we can get a wider coverage of future events through social media channels and other inline facilities, such as news websites and indeed our own website. We are also working hard to build a positive relationship with the local and regional media to get radio and TV coverage of events in the borough. And of course, we make use of our ongoing relationships with community groups to get information out to our residents. I do thank Mrs. Condacore for her question.
Mr. Brian Walmsley, would you ask your question, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. At At a recent overview and scrutiny panel, it was reported that the claimed waiting times for autism diagnosis and neurodevelopment service has increased in North Warwickshire, including Nuneaton and Bedworth, from 44 weeks in July 2018 to 52 weeks in July 2019, with most Nuneaton and Bedworth families having to wait over 2 years, including one family having to wait 4 years. Surely this situation during a child's formative years cannot be acceptable in this day and age. Will the portfolio holder please write to the Warwickshire Health and Wellbeing Board seeking an urgent review to the situation in order to stop this current trend of increasing waiting times and introduce measures to reverse this trend so that our Nuneaton and Bedworth families can be helped by having children assessed at an early stage so that those children can have better life chances?
Mayor, it really saddens me that, and it will probably sadden everyone else in this council chamber tonight. Oh, can you turn that off? It saddens me that, on a serious note, it really saddens me that this issue is happening in 2019. To know that it often takes years to even get on the waiting list for an autism assessment, and during all this time and during the lengthy wait, that the child is not coping at school, getting bullied, developing more and more severe mental health issues. RISE, the new sort of acronym for CAMS, in a way, reported that waits had risen to 52 weeks. And when I looked at quick inquiry to families on the Nuneaton Autism online help site, shows that families are waiting in excess of 2 years, which is just not acceptable. What seems to be distorting the figures is when children find themselves in hospital after complete mental health breakdown or serious suicide attempt, they are put on the waiting list for a day and then receive an assessment a day later. So whilst I am concerned, and I agree with the questioner, the reality seems to be much bleaker than that. Madam Mayor, as a member of the Health and Wellbeing Board, I will write to the Chair to try and seek an urgent review of this situation. However, as we know, I'm not going to do party political broadcast here.
Good.
It's just not good enough. Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor. Oh, and by the way, if the questioner would like to talk to me afterwards, I need to get a little bit more information before I can go to the Chair of the Health and Wellbeing Board and put a letter together. Thank you.
Okay.
Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Phillips. Question 4, Mr. Carl Mayer, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Could the portfolio holder for planning explain to me how this council advertised the current concept plan consultation to get the borough's residents to attend the concept exhibitions, and why the Woodlands Working Men's Club was not used as an exhibition venue for the concept plans, and yet the chess club in Camp Hill was, given there is no development site for Camp Hill in the local plan. Thank you.
Councillor Phillips.
Christmas come all at once, Madam Mayor. Yes, the drop-in sessions, Carl, were originally arranged that there would be one held in each locality area. A further 3 events were held at the request of local councillors at Nuneaton Academy, because Councillor Golby requested. We thought there would be a problem with the one at the Academy because it was very, very quick. So we arranged another one. Whitestone, Councillor Christopher Wilson was concerned about that, and also Weddington. Councillor Condicourt asked for another one there, I believe, and only one person turned up. but it was there. A conscious decision was taken not to hold events in premises where alcohol may be served. That was across the whole borough, to take that conscious decision. The chess club is a community centre. You know, it doesn't serve alcohol. Consultation events were for all the supplementary planning documents being considered and not just the concept plans, and so it was correct that they would be held in all localities. There were drop-in sessions at Gudgeon's End School and Bedworth Civic Hall, both of which I am told were well attended, as well as separate ones at Hawkesbury and Bulkington. In total, 11 drop-in sessions were held. I think that is more drop-in sessions this council has ever held for any consultation event in the past. Sessions were advertised on the council's website. The council's social media accounts and locality officers were also made aware of them, and we used social media. Local community groups did get emails, and I ensured that there was regular Twitter feeds on our accounts. And I did expect other Facebook inter-users to widen the scope. As normal, planning officers are available 9 to 5, Monday to Friday at the Town Hall for queries on the documents, either face-to-face on the telephone, then also there were email channels to the team for other queries. Thank you very much.
The final question is Mr. Lubs-Sekovic, who will make a statement, and I would remind you, sir, that you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The latest Borough Plan consultation on the supplementary planning document has once again been an abject failure. Councillor Phillips and Catherine Morton seem to once again have ignored the advice given to them by their fellow councillors, as well as several residents who have been active participants in engaging with the whole Borough Plan process. You did not advertise or publicise the events more widely. You did not use social media or local community forums. Areas directly affected, such as woodlands, received no direct consultation meetings. The team running the meetings were, through no fault of their own, unaware of what had been said during the hearings and were unable to give clear information to residents who attended. The SPDs are not fit for purpose and appear as a way of trying to get back into the plan some of the more unpopular measures. An example of this can be seen in HSG 7. At the Stage 2 hearings, Warwickshire County Council Highways Department said the Bramcote Close was not suitable as an access point into the site. However, in the SPDs, Bramcote Close has been included once again as a primary access point. Why were officers not taking notes of this during the hearings? When raised with the consultation team, they had no knowledge of the intervention by Warwickshire County Council, and when asked to report this, they were unwilling to do so, saying we should include it in our representations. Once again, I am underwhelmed by the tardiness and lack of interest and support from this council and the indifference of some of the officers to residents. Secondly, there is still no sign of review of housing numbers as asked for in the petition signed by 6,615 residents and as democratically voted and adopted by this council. In the meantime, applications from developers have started to come in. Let me remind you, the term used was immediate review. That means straight away and not in 6 months' time or a year or longer. I found it laughable when I heard that the Labour parliamentary candidate for Bedworth has been delivering leaflets which have 5 promises to residents, the first of which states, I will oppose the council's housing plan. Further to this, the Rugby and Bulkington Labour parliamentary candidate sent me Labour's imaginative name policy called Land for Many on Housing. I particularly enjoyed Chapter 5, especially the bit which says, creating a new model in which development is led by democratically accountable bodies with a duty to serve the public interest, working in partnership with local people, landowners and others. It also means empowering residents to help design their homes and surrounding infrastructure, putting people at the heart of development. Let's be honest, you've done none of this from the day you submitted the plan to the public. You have put upon us your vision and ignored our views and opinions. This Labour group is out of step with its residents, it's out of step with the parliamentary candidate, it's out of step with its own party's national strategies. You aren't here for many, you aren't here for a few, you are here to serve only yourselves. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Sekovic. Right, we move on to agenda item 8, which is any special urgency decisions, and there has been one decision taken by the Cabinet under the special urgency powers as is printed in the agenda on page 4. Okay, so moving on to item 9, which is the business from the council meeting held on the 11th of September 2019, agenda item 14E, a notice of motion. Councillor Wilson, will you move the motion as set out on the agenda papers, please?
As set out on the agenda. And before I do so, as we did last Christmas with the previous mayor, we have, as you might have noticed, had some Christmas jumpers in aid of the mayor's appeal. And those who haven't have paid a humbug tax. So if I give this to Dave, I'm sure he will pass that on to the mayor's.
My sincere thanks for that donation. Thank you very much.
But returning to the motion itself,
Bill.
For all the important roles that we have in the council in terms of making decisions, whether it be planning, licensing or audit and standards, every single member is required to complete training before they sit on those committees. And chairing and being the final decision maker on the rules of the Constitution, the rules of debate, how this chamber operates during a mayoral year are probably some of the most difficult decisions a councillor will have to face in a special responsibility role. And reviewing the Constitution, as far as I can tell, there is no provision actually for the mayor to have mandatory training about the rules of the Constitution, the rules of debate, what constitutes a point of order, what constitutes a point of personal explanation, and so on and so forth. And it is concerning, regardless of whether you are on the front bench, the back bench, the controlling group, or the opposition. The role of the mayor is there as arbiter of the Constitution, but also there to ensure that there is sufficient and, let's face it, in this place, robust debate. And there have been some particularly robust debates in this chamber. Having served in this chamber for 10 years, I have served under some very good mayors and some not so very good mayors. Some have been fantastic at doing the public-facing role, and some have had issues or struggles in interpreting the Constitution. What it is not open for a mayor to do is when someone asks for a point of order or raises a point of order 4 consecutive times, not to hear that point of order. The Constitution says that the point of order must be heard. Whether you agree with the point of order or rule in favour of the point of order is a separate issue. But the Constitution does not give you the authority, or any mayor the authority, not to hear that point of order. The Constitution does not bestow any member the right of personal explanation if they have not already spoken in that debate. But we have seen that happen. And now, with the constitutional amendments, we have seen that when a mayor rules that there has been sufficient debate or decides to move to the vote after it's been moved by a member to close down debate and move to the vote, the Constitution specifically states the mayor must now have a minuted ruling whether they believe sufficient debate has taken place. And we have seen, through human error, that has been forgotten until reminded by officers. There are, I consider, to be 3 most demanding roles in this chamber for elected councillors, that being the mayor, the leader of the council and the leader of the opposition. You are constantly watching what is going on in the chamber. Whether you are speaking or not, you are trying to listen to the debate, follow the debate, see what's going, pick up salient points. And ultimately, the most responsible position is that you hold, Madam Mayor, because you have the final say. And to make sure that mayors are suitably armed for doing their job, I think it is only appropriate that training is done with any incoming mayor, and the motion states that they will do that training before the first substantive meeting after mayor-making ceremony. I think that is perfectly reasonable, it is perfectly fair. If we expect members to have training on whether they give planning consent to something or whether they give someone a taxi licence. And it's only right and proper that the most senior role in this chamber also has that training too, so that all members can be reassured that the meetings are taking place correctly, and to reduce some of the time taken in this chamber debating whether something is in order or it isn't. It's a perfectly reasonable motion, and it will help, I believe, any incoming mayor, regardless of which political persuasion they may be coming from, and so I move the motion, Madam Mayor.
I second the motion and I reserve the right to speak. Thank you.
Okay. Does any other... Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This evening, I'm not going to use this as a sort of forum to bash the mayor, because for what it's worth, I think the existing mayor actually chairs some meetings at this council rather well. And I'll give you an example. Monday evening, where Councillor Tandy chaired the Changing Places working group, where I think in the hour we achieved quite a lot, and hopefully that will be to the benefits of residents of Nuneaton and Bedworth over the next 12 months. However, there is a constitution, most of which has been amended, and those amendments have been led by the mayor. And, you know, as much as I dislike the constitution in its current form, because I think it prohibits backbench councillors like myself from being able to represent my constituents. For example, I probably won't be able to ask my question this evening because of the new amendments. It is something that has to be adhered to. And I simply think trying to make up the rules as we go along is not on. And I think in the long term, I think if this motion is passed this evening, I think it will be to the benefit of future mayors, because we need to make sure that new mayors have the appropriate training to ensure that all councillors from all sides of this chamber are able to represent their constituents, which is what they're paid to do each month. So I think we do need to ensure that councillors have the right to make points of orders and points of personal explanations. I think it can get heated at times, particularly when you've got a councillor trying to shout over another point of order. So perhaps we might want to look at introducing a card system which is used in the European Parliament, which is, you know, less, you know, shouty, and, you know, hold up a red card, that means you can make a point of order, for example. So I think this motion, it's not, you know, a motion to bash anyone. I just think it's a motion which will benefit future mayors to ensure that all of these council meetings are run appropriately for the future. Thank you.
Happy Christmas, everyone, if I don't get a chance to speak again. It is really important that the mayor does a good job and is fluent and happy where they are. And I see lots of mayors learn the job over the year in office. And I think virtually every mayor has got it about right at the end of their term of office. Some of them quite quickly and some of them in a longer time. But it is a really difficult job, particularly in this chamber with two sides and quite a heated debate sometimes. And it's been made more difficult in the last year or so with so many points of order and people trying to get effectively new motions in via the back door, via trying to twist the Constitution around. And I don't think the Constitution actually works in the public's favour. We actually should be here to serve the public, and sometimes we're having quite an argument which doesn't serve the public. So I'm quite keen that we do actually have the first paragraph of this motion to actually get better training and a better flow and get the mayors and hopefully the officers working better together. So like we had Councillor Evans raised a point where he wanted something referred to the public, a public motion referred to scrutiny. I think the more training we have, the more that is the mayor or the officer next to the mayor instantly knows what's going on. We don't have to find books. And so I think there is a lot in this motion. I would question the second paragraph of this motion. I've been the victim of lots of problems in the past, so I understand the first motion, the first paragraph, and we need to work more like the county council. But I don't see now is a point of actually training the current mayor, as you're currently doing the job satisfactorily, well, I don't know what adjective to use. But by the time you get to December, you've had your training, you've had the difficult meetings. So I would move an amendment that we actually remove the second paragraph and actually just vote on the first paragraph. I don't know if anyone will second that point. Thank you.
Seconder for Councillor Condacor's proposal. I'm sorry, the amendment then falls. Councillor Longdon.
Having had the privilege of sitting up there, I understand what it's like. And this motion will not change anything in terms of that, simply because you learn from there. You cannot sit in a classroom or an office or anywhere else and learn this constitution and the way it works and the rules of debate. It's nonsense. And I have chaired some pretty hairy meetings in my lifetime, union-wise, over 2,000 members, all getting a bit irate, and you're looking for the exit door behind you to get out. I've done community groups, I've done various roles and done chairs, and it's just not feasible. So the whole thing is not, in my opinion, worthy of printing it on this paper and trying to get it through this council. I don't know what the ultimate objective was. I'm sure there'd be an explanation that it's nothing serious, it's nothing untoward, but I think there is. It's a waste of time, waste of space, and we should get on with it and not bother with it at all, because the best learning place is sitting in that chair. And that's been said by all the speakers. So as far as it goes, that's my opinion. For what it's worth, after many years of experience, and well done, Madam Mayor, for what you're doing, and all the previous mayors before you, excluding myself, because I won't give myself a pat on the back.
Thank you. Councillor Brown.
Merry Christmas to all fellow councillors on all sides of the chamber, officers and staff of the council while I'm here. This is a friendly motion. Training, by its very nature, prepares people to do a role, whether it's in job, in teaching. We've just heard Councillor Longdon refer to teaching. Teachers go to teacher training. They don't come out of university and go immediately into a classroom and learn on the job. Training prepares you to do a job, and no business, no organisation ever suffered from having better trained people doing the job. We need well-trained people in this chamber. The mayor's role is one that can facilitate debate as well as making decisions. It can help bring out the nuances of the debate and help get points across. We need to engage with the public, and the videos and things that go out of these disjointed meetings that are continually interrupted by difficult points don't do anything to improve the public's perception of this council. So I would support this motion, because I think training is vital for people in all roles within it. I've certainly chaired meetings in other organisations in my current job. You have to have training for it. It doesn't just come to everybody equally. And like I say, nobody ever suffered from having better training. As I say, this is a friendly thing. It's not hostile, and it's not aimed at anybody in particular. It's about the future of this council and making it better for all the residents of the town and for ourselves. Please support it.
I didn't really want to discuss this in the chamber or to take part in the debates, but I've been so disgusted by some of the things I've seen going on in this chamber over the last few months that I feel compelled to. The mayor is to attend training with the director. This is new, is it? As far as I know, every mayor has ongoing training on how the constitution works as necessary and right through their term of office. Now there's a motion, to me it's just a party political stunt to generate yet more YouTube minutes for the party opposite, or at least some of them. Instead, perhaps, we should all have training on how to be civil and address each other with equal respect, as taught in schools, even today. The first time I saw this sort of behaviour, questioning the chair on their every decision, was in the late 60s and 70s. The chair would be bombarded by orchestrated points of order, making clear thought impossible for many people there. The far left did this to breed disenchantment in the student body, and meetings lasted hours. Well, it's not the far left doing it now, is it? Training was not needed then, something else was, and it's not needed now. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Lloyd.
I've sat in that chair, and yes, it can be quite intimidating. The first meeting that you're holding in that chair. My first meeting, I always remember it, and that was, it was a full council meeting. It was the annual council for the mayor making. And I always remember it, there's a lot of people won't remember it, across and on this side, Tom Wilson, which has never ever been done, bless him, stood up and challenged the position for mayor, which was never done. It was always done at the prior meeting, etc. And it ended up a very, very difficult meeting. And you learn straight away, because the gentleman you turn to is the solicitor or the legal advice on your right. I, at the time, was told sometimes the legal advice ain't there, so I actually adapted the Constitution with loads of little yellow tags in it all the way through. So when anybody asked for a point of order, I said, what page, where? What's the point of order on? They answered me back, I checked it in the book, and that was it. So I learned as the time went on to do that. But training's always there. It's always there, you only have to ask. But the best training, you've heard it tonight, is that first meeting when you sit in that chair. Because you're right, I think it was Councillor Wilson said that you're looking around the room, you're looking to see who's putting their hands up. It used to be like that. It should still be like that. But what you can't have is shouting and screaming coming from the audience. You know, from all, I'm not just pushing on one political group. So you have to stand, put your foot down at times. So I don't believe that we should make it mandatory. It should be up to the incumbent mayor when they initially take office. If they feel they're not experienced enough, then ask for the training on the way to progress those meetings. So I'm not going to be voting on this. I think it's up to the individual mayor to ask for Constitution training. They should know the Constitution, like everybody in here should know the Constitution, and I hope they do.
Councillor Jackson.
Our Constitution actually makes reference to what or how the mayor should be selected. And I believe, from recollection, the length of service is very important. And we do receive, all of us, an opportunity to attend training on the Members' Code of Conduct, the Constitution, how to raise points of order, how to behave in accordance with that Constitution. Very important. I have to say that I often attend training opportunities, not always, but I often attend them. And attendance from elected members varies significantly. Sometimes there are very few members there, sometimes a number. But by the time a mayor takes office, they've normally undergone that training at least a couple of times. I was quite surprised, I think it was this week, it may have been the back end of next week, to receive an invitation from the Local Government Association, a cross-party association that we are a member of, to attend a training event on civility in public life. And I think that is something that each and every one of us needs to consider in this chamber. There has to be respect for the office of the mayor. And frankly, on occasions, I'm sure all of us would agree that we haven't always upheld the very best of behaviours. And that isn't a political point, that is across the chamber, that we are duty-bound to show respect for the mayor and to accept that when the mayor makes a ruling, that ruling is final. It is not subject to challenge. So, Madam Mayor, I have every confidence that training opportunities are undertaken as required. And I can only say, even this year, Madam Mayor, I have had training with yourself on numerous issues. I know leaders of the two groups, other than the Labour group, have also been given advice from the solicitor in regard to what are and are not appropriate points to make. So, Madam Mayor, I'm sure training will be undertaken as and when appropriate. This motion is just too narrow for me to support this evening.
Thank you. Because Councillor Gutteridge, you reserved your right to speak.
I think we move to the vote, please, and we'll have a recorded vote, please.
Okay. Thank you. You do you want your right? You want?
Yes, I do
you wish your right? Yeah. Okay.
Well, I have to say I'm very surprised from members opposite who are usually pushing for training on virtually every subject that comes before this council are refusing to have training on one of the most highest offices that this council can bestow on any member. And if you take the line of argument, and actually I was going to quote Councillor Longden as one of the good examples of a mayor, because believe it or not, when you're down to 3 members on this side of the chamber, and Councillor Longden was the incoming mayor after that election, to be fair to Councillor Longden, he always ensured that the voices on this side were heard, even though we were down to 3. Even though we represented a significant proportion of the vote, we were down to 3. And that is a sign of statesmanship to an extent, and also of fairness. But what isn't fair is, for example, not expecting someone who is exercising ultimate decision on whether something is in order, whether a subject has been considered in great detail. Take, for example, the borough plan. Take, for example, town centre regeneration and all the other policies we consider. When we sit here and when we exercise our votes and when members of the public see it, I think the least they can expect is that the mayor has had sufficient training. Councillor Longden is right. Training only gives you so much, and you do learn on the job. That is true. But unless you have the fundamentals, unless you have the basics, unless you have those pillars underlining everything, that basic training about what things are, all the experience in the world won't help you if your experience is doing things wrong in the first place. You need to make sure you get it right. And understanding what a basic point of order is, or a point of personal explanation, those are basic issues where every member should expect that the mayor is competent in dealing with. That's only right and proper and fair. Because if you take Councillor Longden's logic even further, and that you only learn on the job, what's the point in us having training on planning before we sit? They'll just say, oh, you learn on the job. You do, but unless you know the fundamentals, you're going to get it wrong in the first place. What's the point in, before you decide whether a person is a fit and proper person to hold a taxi licence, what's the point in having training? Oh, you'll just learn on the job. That's not right. What we're asking for is the basis of good governance. And the party opposite should not be afraid of good governance. We have training for everything else. Yes, the mayor will learn on the job, but they also should have and be mandated to have that training before they sit in the big chair on their first big ticket items. Because that's only what good governance would consider to be right and proper. So you can hide behind this all you like, but what are you afraid of? That's what I'm wondering, and what members of the public should be wondering. I'm not afraid of having training if I was ever to be fortunate to sit in that chair, and Councillor Jackson says it should go to the person of longest service. Well, if she looks, you'll find that isn't actually the case. The Constitution says it should in most instances go to long service councillors. I've known of councillors who have sat on that bench after only being in the chamber for 2 years. And people have sat in that chair more than once, and other people have not been fortunate to have that honour. And that's because the party opposite have turned it into a political office and not a ceremonial office. And that is wrong. And again, I think it's politics which is hiding us from actually doing the right thing and having training for the mayor to make sure that everyone knows the decision that has been made from that chair is fair, proper, and as far as possible legal in the terms, the letter and the spirit of the Constitution. So if you're afraid of training, then you shouldn't be afraid. If you're not afraid of training, then you shouldn't be afraid of voting for this tonight. A little bit of learning hurt no one, but having no learning at all hurts more people than ever. Thank Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Debate, Councillor Longdon. Point of personal...
As I seem to be the target all the time. And I do object to being spun again by the members opposite, particularly Councillor Wilson. I never mentioned planning or licensing or anything like that. I left it to the mayoralty, whereas planning and licensing are specific one-off items. The mayor's job is the whole of the constitution across the whole piece. And that's what I was referring to, and not being specific and then being taken out of context by you lot yet again.
Thank you. Right. To the vote, there has been a request for a recorded vote.
If you could indicate for or against the motion, please. Councillor Beaumont.
Against.
Councillor Bruni-Edwards, apologies. Councillor Brown.
For.
Councillor Croft.
For.
Councillor Daffin.
Against.
Councillor Doherty. Councillor Elliott.
Against.
Councillor Evans.
For.
Councillor Gazane.
For.
Councillor Glass.
Against.
Councillor Golby.
For.
Councillor Gran.
For.
Councillor Gutteridge.
Definitely for.
Councillor Hancox.
Against.
Councillor Hocking. Councillor Jackson. Councillor Condacour.
For.
Councillor Welling-Nash.
For.
Councillor Lloyd.
Against.
Councillor Longdon.
Against.
Councillor Pandair.
For.
Councillor Phillips.
Against.
Councillor Pomfret.
Against.
Councillor Rudkin. Councillor A. Sargent.
For.
Councillor J. Sargent. Councillor J. Shepherd. Councillor T. Shepherd. Councillor Smith.
For.
Councillor Tandy.
Against.
Councillor Tromans.
For.
Councillor Walmsley, apologies. Councillor Watkins.
Against.
Councillor Wilson.
For.
The notice of motion is lost. Moving then on to item 10, which is the 10, which is the Cabinet report, and I would remind members this is simply about questions on the Cabinet report. Councillor Jackson.
As usual, I'm happy to present this report, and either myself or fellow Cabinet members will endeavour to answer any questions members may have.
Evans.
I have 3 questions to the Leader of the Council in her capacity as Portfolio Holder for Finance and Civic Affairs. Regarding the draft Bedworth Town Centre visioning document, the public consultation on page 42 of the agenda, can I ask the Leader of the Council if she could please inform me why she refused my request at the Cabinet meeting a few weeks ago for a public consultation evening at the Bedworth Civic Hall? Could I ask how the Council intend to inform members of the public about the consultation, as numerous people I've spoken to in the town don't even know there is a consultation taking place? My second question, on page 43, you mentioned the draft General Fund and HRA budgets for 2020-2021. At a time when we're asking members of the public to take another council tax increase, can the Leader of the Council really justify spending over £44,000 each financial year on the Council's In Touch magazine and the Mayor's Jaguar? And my final question, on page 44, the quarterly review of strategic performance report. The report includes the composting target for that quarter, which is just 36%. Does the Leader of the Council agree that in light of the Council potentially declaring a climate emergency later on this evening, that target should really be far higher? Thank you.
Councillor Jackson.
The public consultation in regard to the very important Bedworth visioning document will commence shortly, and elected members will be given full details of that consultation. I am of the view that public consultation is best done with the ability for people to make individual comments rather than solely at a large public meeting. In regard to spending plans, they are set, the second of Councillor Evans' questions. He mentioned a figure of £44,000. All decisions relating to budgets are set by full council in February at the budget meetings. In regard to composting targets, Councillor Evans refers to a future agenda item, a notice of motion that has been submitted. Part of that notice of motion is to set up a cross-party working party that will be looking at how we can contribute towards bringing our carbon footprint down. That is the purpose of that motion. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
Things on the Cabinet report. Would you prefer I take them individually or together?
Put them all together, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Firstly, on page 38, 2A, the meeting on the 4th of September, so this is to the planning portfolio holder. It talks about the local development scheme and when that went out to consultation. Can the portfolio holder give an update on when we will actually have the local development scheme in place? Because that is what enables us to have the critical review of the borough plan, something which has been promised for a long time and is getting even more urgent, especially given that we're now told that it is that members of the Labour Party are campaigning against it in Bedworth. Also, on page 40, I think it's still on 2I, Finance and Civic Affairs, the Town Centre Regeneration, procurement of a development partnership. Can the portfolio holder give an update on to where we are with that? Because, like the portfolio holder, I agree that pace is critical with ensuring that we get the town centre regeneration right. And with this funding on offer, I accept the election may confuse some of the timelines and dates, but the quicker we make sure that we have all our ducks lined up in a row so we can access up to £50 million of regeneration for Nuneaton, the better. So I'd like an update, if she can, on where that is. And finally, on page 42, item 4A, the draft Bedworth Town Centre visioning document, to the Leader of the Council, could she please explain why individuals have been shown and consulted on this document before all members had even been briefed on this by officers? As elected members, regardless of which political party we're from, this should have been briefed on to all members before it went outside of this council. And that was told to us by I won't name names in the chamber, but when we had that briefing, which was very informative and very useful, we were told that certain individuals who represent authorities in Bedworth had been shown this document before all members had been consulted on. That, I think, is a grave discourtesy to all elected members and should not take place, and will the Leader ensure that won't happen again on such a large-scale project?
Question for Councillor Phillips, which I'm sure he will deal with shortly. In regard to funding bids, there are two separate pots of money available for one for transforming Nuneaton, one in regard to a wider Nuneaton bid, and of course we are pursuing, in light of producing a visioning document which will go to consultation for Bedworth, a bid in the future for Bedworth Town Centre as well. Details of those will be fed to elected members in a timely manner. In regarding to consultation, it's very important that we consult a variety of our partners, both Warwickshire County Council, and the document to which Councillor Wilson refers to was a joint visioning document created with Warwickshire County Council. It is important that we consult people. I take on board the comments he has made about when elected members are consulted, and obviously we want the widest possible consultation amongst members and indeed members of the public and other interested bodies.
It's just my age. Basically, we will, if it's regarding setting up the committee that we've talked about, cross-party, we are looking to do that in January. The Leader and myself were at a meeting, so this is the start of the review work that's needed in North Warwickshire last Friday to start to discuss how we will work across the district, Coventry and Warwickshire. All planners were there, etc., and there will be further meetings, I think, in February on how we're going to take the reviews forward. There are some councils that are like us, ready to start and looking at moving forward to the review. Regarding sort of Bedworth's councillors or Bedworth's MP, potential MP, I think the lady was talking about the whole of North Warwickshire, as they don't even have a plan adopted yet, you know, but I can see where the spin will come from. So, to recap, we will start again. We are starting the review. We've been to a cross-district meeting, right? We hope to sort of have meetings in January, and we'll go through the local development scheme then.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Phillips. Councillor Condacore, please.
Thank put them together, but I'll start with Councillor Phillips because he's got the shortest memory. In terms of the local development framework again, at 2A, which is also mentioned, I think, at 2G, one of the things in these meetings you're having in North Warwickshire, I hope, is on the housing numbers. And we've got a big new projection on life expectancy, migrations down, so many things have changed. Can you give us a time frame for when this meeting will set at least a start for a new housing target, or having the same housing target over 10 more years? So that's the first question. The second question is for the leader, which is from the West Midlands Combined Authority paperwork, which is at 5.2D, which talks about the Abbey Street project. We had some idea on the Vicarage Street project, actually announced in the Nuneaton News. It mentioned here the viability of the Abbey Street regeneration project. So I hope the leader could tell us a little bit. I know a lot will be confidential, but just, are we actually moving forward with building something like a cinema in the near term? So, thank you very much.
For Condacore, no. I've got no idea when we will sit down as a cross area and be able to start working on the numbers at the present moment in time.
Thank you.
I note your interest in all of the regeneration of Nuneaton. I share concerns that we should have pace in regard to this, and I think the very best way forward is to perhaps have a monthly or appropriately timed briefing to all elected members in regard to process. And I will ask officers if we can get a monthly, bi-monthly note out to elected members. Thank you.
Councillor Evans, you wish to ask further questions?
Questions are to the portfolio holder for planning and development. In relation to the local plan development schemes and their consultations, you said you didn't want to hold consultation events at premises which serve alcohol. If this is the case, can you explain why you used the Civic Hall as a location for a consultation event? And my second question, in relation to Labour Group policy on the borough plan, do we take the official line from the portfolio holder for planning or someone else?
Councillor Phillips, you ready?
Yes, Councillor Evans, one to you. Good point. Bar shut though, 3 till 5, but point taken. Regarding the Civic Hall, that is.
Excuse me. Thank you. Continue, Councillor Phillips.
And the second question, you take the line from the official, me.
Graham.
Well, it's the first one I've received this year, so quite grateful for that. My question's to the leader of the Borough Council. I would like to ask if you did put in an application on behalf of the Borough Council to the Combined Authorities Brownfield Development Fund to enable development of the brownfield land behind the Cricketers' Arms in Bedworth.
Believe correctly, I'm not sure that the piece of land behind the Cricketers' Arms is solely in the ownership of the Borough Council. I would suggest that actually, if you believe that piece of land needs developing, that you in the first instance talk to officers of the council. But I think we do need to bear in mind that not all land in the borough actually is owned by the Borough Council. and we have no rights to develop pieces of land which we do not own. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Evans.
Is to the portfolio holder for arts and leisure. Last week I received a briefing, as did other members, from Glendale about the new Glendale live system, which is to be launched soon, I believe. Siri is obviously trying to outplay me a bit this evening. I have to say, I struggle to understand what benefit this new system will actually bring to the public. You cannot report issues, for example, an overflowing dog bin, for example, on this new system, which I thought was the whole purpose of this new system. And secondly, you don't know, what assets they're talking about. For example, if I was to enter Alec Wilson playing field, it comes up with a list of 10 dog bins. How do I know which dog bin is going to be emptied on that specific date? So my question is, why is the Glendale live system been delayed regarding the launch? I thought this was meant to be launched when the new contract came into effect. And are we paying any extra on top of this for this new system? Because I don't really think it's value for money if we are.
I do apologise, but I've been off the scene, as some members will know, for over a month. And I can't answer that question at the moment, but I will get you a written response, I promise you that. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hancock.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Could I ask the Leader of the Council, first of all, on one point earlier that was made, do you actually know that the land behind the cricketers is in private ownership?
Carry on, and she'll
Let me to ask you the questions.
Yeah, ask the other
oh,
question.
right, okay then. Okay. And I'd also like to ask the Leader if she would agree with me that the public are aware and becoming more aware of the visioning document about Bedworth Town Centre. And have you, like myself, been stopped and asked about the Bedworth visionary document? Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Jackson.
Of who owns every single piece of land in the borough. It would be ridiculous for me to suggest that I do. I do not believe at this moment in time that the piece of land behind the Cricketers' Arms is owned by the Borough Council in the main part. I did suggest that Councillor Gran, if he wishes to know the answer to that, approaches council officers to see if they can assist. But it isn't my knowledge that we own that piece of land at this moment in time. In regard to the Bedworth visioning document, I can say that even before we have launched the official consultation, which we hope to do very shortly, yes, I have been approached by members of the public in regard to this because there is great interest. Bedworth is a very important town in our borough, alongside Nuneaton, obviously, and people have great expectations of what Bedworth's future will be like going forward. So, Councillor Hancock, like yourself, my answer to the second part of your question is yes, I have been asked by people who live in Bedworth about this document, and I hope that all elected members and members of the public who visit Bedworth or live in Bedworth will take the opportunity to take part in the consultation.
I have one further speaker indicating, and then I intend to move to next business. Councillor Condacourt.
It talks about the £150,000 feasibility study. This is related to the up to £25 million we could get for this project. Do we actually know we will actually get 25 million, nothing, or can you give us an idea of what we've actually been promised or guided that we might get? Thank you.
Out the particular part of the report that Councillor Condacourt is referring to, but he mentions a fund of up to £25 million that we can bid for. I can't tell Councillor Condacourt whether we will get any money or what specific amounts of money we will get at this stage. We have to put in a bid and go through the appropriate processes to the government in order to put our case. As soon as we have any further information, like everything in this council, we will make sure that elected members are kept informed. But at this stage, Councillor Condacourt, I don't have an exact figure, or any figure for that matter.
Then we'll be moving on to the next item on the agenda, which is agenda item 11, review of polling districts and polling places. Councillor Jackson, could I ask you to move the recommendations as summarised on page 47 of the agenda?
To move the recommendations as printed on page 47, and think it is important to note that this document will come back to Council in February so that we have a further report which will address the suggestions and the responses that have been received. So today we're just noting the responses received, agreeing Appendix C, but there will be a further report back to Council in February. I so move, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. A seconder for the proposal. Thank you. Councillor Evans.
The report, Madam Mayor.
Sorry.
But I'd just like to... I have spoken to Debbie DeVille from the elections team about this, and I think I'd like to take the opportunity to thank the elections team for everything that they've done this year. I mean, I know most people think it's quite a quiet department, but I expect they've been very busy this time of year. I did ask why the recommendations wouldn't come to this council, and apparently it's because by law we have to get this approved before January. So I'm happy to support the report, obviously on the basis that it comes back to council in February, and I hope some of the recommendations I proposed will come into effect.
Berman.
Present and all employees of the council. I just wanted to, and Councillor Evans has already said it, commend officers for their work on this. It is, it's very timely. I guess they weren't expected to be as busy as they are this time of year. A couple of entities came forward and made representations to me as part of this. There seemed to be a few misunderstandings amongst schools, for example, that felt that they had to provide public toilets in able to be a polling station, and that isn't the case, and Debbie was able to clear that up. I'm just thinking that maybe it would be a good idea for the council to put some more information on its website about what's required to be a polling station and what the obligations on them are, so that if schools, for example, tell their parents that, I'm sorry, we're closing for the day for a particular reason, that the public can see whether that reason is actually valid or not. Because I have had a few complaints from residents about schools closing, and the reasons that were cited weren't actually technical ones that Debbie was able to confirm. So, thank you.
Thank you. Do you have any more? Oh, Councillor Condacore, sorry.
Department works at the moment. One of the issues I'd just like to raise is the development to the north of Nuneaton. And actually, if this is a review we're doing now, before we do the next review in however many years, we may actually have a need for one or two more polling stations in the new development areas, because they're gradually working towards the A5, which is a considerable distance from the existing polling stations. And the second point I'd like to make is sometimes we use porter cabins, and can we please not have the diesel generators going, polluting and causing noise, because the hours of the polling stations are actually very long now. And obviously the generators go earlier in the morning. So I hope as soon as possible, if we do need to use porter cabins, we can actually be mindful of the residents around those porter cabins. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. In relation to polling stations, I've always found the electoral officers, it's quite a fluid system. It's almost a constant review. You can always put things in. And I've been asking for some years about whether we could have a polling station on Croft Pool in Bedworth, because it's quite an isolated one road in, one road out. But I think it's the numbers game on that one, but there's not enough people. But again, because this is coming back again, I will still be requesting that thing. And it's useful that it's coming back, because it will maybe give an opportunity to Councillor Evans to be able to get to know Bedworth a little bit better. Because it's somewhat annoying, Madam Mayor, for some of the unnecessary and ill-informed comments that he makes on occasions. And I'll just point out some examples, if I can refer members to page 59 of the document. It's the lengthy one by Councillor Evans. And in relation to Bedworth, which which I represent, he talks about the polling district areas like Gatehouse. Gatehouse is a house, it's not an area. And Gibson Crescent vote at the Civic Hall. They do. They do. It's a long way to go. I'm one of them. And then he goes on to say it should be covered by the Grove housing complex on Tower Road. Well, I'm sorry, the Grove is up in the town centre. Eddie Miller Court is on Tower Road, and yet he mentions it as on 5 occasions in that paragraph as being in Tower Road. He doesn't know Bedworth, he's never known it properly, and it just proves it. If I go on to the second part, Poplar Ward, he talks about that it would make more sense for it to be used in the Pine Tree Community Library. First of all, Pine Tree Road is in Bede Ward. Secondly, there's no such place as the Pine Tree Community Library. The Tory County Council shut that down about 25 years ago. So he mentions that 3 times on there, Madam Mayor, in one paragraph. I'm sorry, but Councillor Evans should get to know the town that he says he represents properly. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Point of personal explanation.
Yes, Councillor Evans.
I did make the mistake about the Grove housing complex. I admit to that. It should say Eddie Miller Court. I did realise that after I submitted it. But with regards to Pine Tree Road, yes, I agree. It's in the Bede Ward. Yeah, on the very border. It should be accepted. But if Councillor Hancock's would ever like me to take him to the Pine Tree Community Library, as I believe it's called on the sign outside, I'd be happy to meet him this week and show him.
Thank you. Councillor Longdon.
In this country is a very, very great privilege. And I do get annoyed sometimes with people who don't go out and vote, and I tell them so. And we've had many a heated conversation with people who do not vote, and especially considering that it was just, 100 years ago, women were dying to get the vote. And it's one of those things that we really need to make sure that people have every opportunity to vote in a place that is convenient to them. I know very well now that we've got the opportunity of postal voting, and Councillor Watkins and myself tried to get people to register for postal votes where it was difficult for them to get to a polling station. And so we had all these initiatives, but we really need to look at these issues, and hopefully in February we'll be able to put some of them to bed and give people the opportunity of ease of voting if they wish to go out and vote.
Thank you. Jackson referred earlier to civility in politics. Well, I think we just had an example here of criticising someone, i.e. Councillor Evans, actually trying to do their job of representing their residents. And actually, it is factually incorrect to say you can't go and vote at a polling station in another ward because it's not your ward. That happens all over this town, and we would not function without it. Councillor Hancock's criticised someone for suggesting that the recommendation or the response was not valid or bad because they suggested that they put a polling district from one ward to go and vote at a station at another. That's incorrect. Actually, in my ward, for example, my residents in WHE and WHD, I think it is from memory, go and vote at the Whitestone Community Centre, which is in Attleborough. So that happens all over the place, and I can think of other examples as well across the borough, but that's just the one which springs to mind because that is in my ward. I wasn't actually going to rise on this because it should really be going through without comment because it's a legal document that just sets out where people vote. We're never going to please everyone all the time where we set polling stations because you're always going to upset someone. I have residents on Portia Close. They hate having the caravan on Portia Close because they struggle to park their cars because it is a confined space. However, they haven't made representations for whatever reason. They may not even know that the consultation existed. But at the end of the day, as councillors, this is one of the areas we should accept. We're never going to please everyone all the time. vote it through, and actually, if you have some suggestions, don't go criticising people for their recommendations when I can't see anything in this document from those other people who are doing the criticising. We talk about civility in politics. Let's practice what we preach.
Explanation.
Sorry, who was that? Sorry, Councillor Evans.
And it's called Pine Tree Community Library.
Having no further speakers, Councillor Jackson, you have the right to reply.
There have been several comments made, and I would ask members, if they haven't already done so, to approach officers and to put forward their representation so that we can have the most informed report back to Council in February. I think that's appropriate to do. Madam Mayor, I also think it's been very helpful tonight that there has been a thanks to our election staff expressed across the whole of this chamber. Madam Mayor, it is absolutely vital that we have a first-rate election service within Nuneaton and Bedworth, and I am pleased that we do have exactly that, and it is really pleasing tonight that that seems to have cross-party support. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
So on that very point that you have just made, I think it would behove as well if we could ask our senior officers to pass those thanks on to that section. So I'll move to the vote. All those in favour, please show. I believe that's unanimous. Thank you very much. Moving on to item 12, the sub-regional recycling facility. I'm inviting Councillor Jill Shepherd, the portfolio holder for Central Services and Refuse, and ask, would you move the recommendations as set out on page 71 of the agenda?
The background to this report being on the agenda for tonight's council meeting is given in section 3 of the report on page 72. The report puts forward suggestions that will allow the council to scrutinise and oversee both the establishment and operation of the new local authority owned and operated MRF located in Coventry, and how the Borough Council shareholding in the new asset company that they will operate the sub-regional MIF is exercised. Paragraph 4.1 and 4.2 of the report propose that the most appropriate way to scrutinise how well the MRF is operating would be for regular reports to be presented to the Internal Overview and Scrutiny Panel, with these reports being presented on a 6-monthly basis for the foreseeable future. Paragraphs 4.3 to 4.6 of the report deals with the proposals to allow scrutiny of how the Borough Council shareholdings in the asset company are being exercised, building on our own approach for NABCEL and Coventry City's approach for the arm's length companies it operates. It is proposed that a shareholder committee should be set up with a membership that includes all of the partner councils. Reports that are presented to the shareholder committee could also be presented to the Internal Overview and Scrutiny Panel in confidential session due to the commercial sensitivity information that this will contain. The reports and the recommendations of the Council to consider are set out in section 2 of the report on page 71. I'll move the recommendations. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Does any member wish to speak? Councillor Wilson.
As I put this report together, it was our side at the last council who first raised this issue about scrutiny, and these suggestions seem to be the most positive way forward on scrutinising what is going to be a large investment from this council and a significant financial undertaking, which, based on the figures which we have had before us in the past and having had meetings with officers, show that there should be a significant benefit to the council, but that does not mean that we should not adequately scrutinise the functions of this company. And it therefore shows that this authority is a serious player in this sub-regional facility by looking at the scrutiny arrangements, wanting to make sure it happens correctly, that we have all the proper governance arrangements in place, and the fact that it appears to be us talking to the partner councils about scrutiny at this stage just goes to show how serious and committed we are as an authority to getting this right, because whilst there are significant benefits, we also have to be mindful of the risks that there are with such an investment, and I believe this helps to mitigate the risk which we could possibly be at, that we could possibly be exposed to. So I'm more than happy to second them, as I have done, and vote for them, because we need to be on board, we need to get this going, and showing to our partner authorities we may be small, but we have big influence and we have big ideas, and we want to think big for the future for our residents. So I will support that, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we called for this document to give us some guidance to the scrutiny. One thing I mentioned was freedom of information, and I'm not absolutely clear whether the shareholder committee will be a public body or actually part of a private entity which is appointed to by the public body. And these things do matter in terms of freedom of information. So I do hope we have some clarity on that going forward, because not only should we have councillors able to scrutinise, but we should have a level at which members of the public can put in freedom of information requests. And depending on the structural arrangements, there is a danger that it is something that cannot be scrutinised properly. So I currently won't be voting for this. I like the principle of the shareholder committee, but I do need a few more safeguards before I'm happy. Thank you.
Thank you. I have no other speakers. Councillor Shepherd, do you have the right of reply if you choose to.
I've spoken. I move to the vote, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Who's in favour of the recommendation, please show. That seems to be unanimous. Oh, sorry. I beg your pardon. Yes, we will, of course. Agenda item 13 is recommendations from Cabinet or other committees. Moving to 13A. Councillor Jackson, would you like to move the recommendations as set out on the agenda papers?
Consultation carried out in regard to local council tax support, and Cabinet are pleased to recommend those recommendations as printed on page 74. We think, although the amounts involved are quite small to individuals who are suffering quite severely at the moment, many of them, we believe they will go some way to us achieving some benefit for some of the most vulnerable residents paying council tax. There is a cost to the council tax payers as a whole, but we believe this is something that we hope is going to receive cross-party unanimous support in this chamber this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Who was that? Councillor Condicle. Thank you. Did you wish to speak now, Councillor Condicle?
Yeah, a really good thing we're doing, changing this from 20% minimum council tax to 15%, because actually, for the people having to pay that, that means actually a quarter less council tax for the very poorest in the borough. So I am seconding this. It should have been done years ago. And if you look at page 79, this is costing us £29,000 to put £250,000 into the pockets of the poorest in this borough. Mostly paid for by the county council, because we quite often say we only have 13% of the council tax. The way this works is actually we only have to pay for 13% of this benefit. So this is really good, and we need to go further in future years and try and get it down to 10%. And the final thing, just mentioning and seconding it, in the table of the costs, pensioners are protected, but you see on page 77, the cost of the pensioner benefit going down and down and down from 5.5 million to 4 million. That's because of the changing age of pensions and the WASPy issue. People are getting their pensions later. So actually this benefit to us is getting worse, less expensive. Thank you.
To speak. Actually, it is the council tax support scheme as summarised on page 75.
No, page 5.
On page 5, not page 74. Thank you, Simone. Right. Does any member wish to speak? Therefore, Councillor Jackson, do you wish the right of reply?
Unusual for me to do this, but I think this is such an important item. I'm going to ask that we do have a recorded vote on this item so that we can see whether or not this actually does receive that unanimous support and have those facts printed on the next minutes of a council agenda.
Okay.
Could indicate for or against the recommendations, please. Councillor Beaumont.
For.
Councillor Brinley Edwards, apologies. Councillor Brown.
For.
Councillor Croft.
For.
Councillor Daffin. Councillor Doherty. Councillor Elliott. Councillor Evans.
For.
Councillor Gazain has left the room. Councillor Glass.
For.
Councillor Golby.
For.
Councillor Gran.
For.
Councillor Gutteridge.
For.
Councillor Hancox.
For.
Councillor Hocking. Councillor Jackson. Councillor Condacor.
For.
Councillor Llewellyn-Nash. Councillor Lloyd.
For.
Councillor Longdon.
For.
Councillor Pandair.
For.
Councillor Phillips.
For.
Councillor Pomfret.
For.
Councillor Rudkin. Councillor A. Sargent.
For.
Councillor J. Sargent. Councillor J. Shepherd. Councillor T. Shepherd. Councillor Smith.
For.
Councillor Tandy.
For.
Councillor Tromans.
For.
Councillor Walmsley's apologies. Councillor Watkins.
For.
Councillor Wilson.
For.
That's a unanimous decision, thank you. 13B of the report is the Treasury and Management 2019-20 mid-year review. Councillor Jackson, can I invite you to move the recommendation, please?
Madam Mayor, I'm more than happy to move the recommendations as printed at section 2 of this report.
Thank you. Seconder for the report? Councillor Phillips, thank you. Does any member wish to speak on this item? No? In that case, then, I will move to the vote. All those in... by law, we are required to have a recorded vote. So, do you want to go through it again, Simone?
Again, if you could indicate for or against the recommendations. Councillor Beaumont. For. Councillor Brinley Edwards. Apologies. Councillor Brown.
For.
Councillor Croft.
For.
Councillor Daffin. Councillor Doherty. Councillor Elliott. Councillor Evans.
For.
Councillor Hussain. Councillor Glass.
For.
Councillor Golby. Councillor Gran. Councillor Gutteridge. Councillor Gutteridge. Councillor Hancox.
For.
Councillor Hocking. Councillor J. Jackson. Councillor Condacor.
Against.
Councillor Llewellyn-Nash. Councillor Lloyd.
For.
Councillor Longdon.
For.
Councillor Pandair.
For.
Councillor Phillips.
For.
Councillor Pomfret.
For.
Councillor Rudkin. Councillor A. Sargent.
For.
Councillor J. Sargent. Councillor J. Shepherd. Councillor T. Shepherd. Councillor Smith.
For.
Councillor Tandy.
For.
Councillor Tromans.
For.
Councillor Walmsley's apologies. Councillor Watkins.
For.
Councillor Wilson.
For.
Thank you. That is carried with one member voting against. Thank you. We move then on to the notices of motion. 14A, the Cross-Party Climate Change Working Group. Do we have a proposer for the motion? Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I wish to move the motion as printed and signed on page 112 of this evening's agenda. This motion, if approved this evening, would mean this council declaring a climate emergency to see what we can do to improve things locally and also to call on the government to provide the necessary resources and powers to enable the council to help deliver the UK's carbon reduction target. There can be no doubt that without urgent action, we are facing an environmental disaster. The UK's former chief scientist has said it is right to be scared about the pace of climate change given the increase in the number of extreme weather events. We face the prospect of rising sea levels, weather changes that could see food shortages, loss of certain species, and so much more. Now, if not sooner, is the time to act. I'm inspired particularly by young people who point out the devastating impact of our actions in not addressing this more quickly. In the words of Greta Thunberg, we are angry, we are frustrated, and it's because of good reasons. And further, she says, if they want us to stop being angry, maybe they should stop making us angry. Madam Mayor, I couldn't agree more. We simply must address this urgently. This evening, I trust this motion will not be subject to political difference, but will show our united belief that we should do this for the future of the people of Nuneaton and Bedworth and beyond. Further, we should do so as quickly as possible, getting a report back to Cabinet within 4 months, setting out the initial findings and recommendations of the cross-party working group on how we can make this council's activities carbon neutral by 2030. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Councillor Phillips. Is there any member who wishes to speak? Councillor Evans.
A number of comments that the Leader of the Council has made on this motion. There's a saying that actions speak louder than words, and I believe that the motion sitting in front of us today does very little to seek action on what is clearly a very important issue going forward for our country. I therefore wish to formally propose a number of amendments to this motion which takes physical action tackling climate change in this borough. And I'd like to ask the committee clerk if she would kindly distribute those to the Leader of the Council and to the Mayor and officers. One of my amendments is to include a ban of single-use plastics.
Can we just wait of them? Oh. Sorry, we seem to only have one for each of the members. Continue, Councillor Evans.
Ban of single-use plastics within the Town Hall and the Bedworth Civic Hall. I'm pleased that so many people across the country are taking the issue of plastic pollution more seriously, specifically in oceans across the globe. Scientific research suggests that 10 million metric tonnes of plastic each year ends up in our oceans, choking and killing the marine life in our oceans. We can use the power and influence in this chamber today to do our bit by banning the use of single-use plastics in two of the largest buildings that we run. For example, at the Bedworth Civic Hall, instead of using plastic Coca-Cola bottles, we could look to use glass bottles instead. And instead of providing plastic cups over there for the water fountain, we could just put out some glasses instead. I think it's absolutely vital that within the council we have someone at director level who leads our campaign to fight climate change in Nuneaton and Bedworth. That's why I've added an amendment that the executive directors appoint a climate change champion at director level within their team to lead on the council's progress on this matter. Earlier within the year, the government launched a fund named the Urban Tree Challenge Fund, where councils could have applied for funding towards planting more trees within the borough. And to my knowledge, no submissions were made to the government, which is a shame because we could have planted more trees, particularly near busy roads, in order to cut carbon emissions across the borough. So I think the amendment for an investigation into that is important in order to learn lessons from the past, and where the government do bring out similar funds in the future, we should apply for those. We've seen numerous companies and organisations over the last 12 months also move vehicles over to electric by means of cutting carbon emissions. And last year's Conservative Party conference, I got a tour of the Royal Mail's new Mercedes-Benz e-Vito, which has just started circling the cities of the UK. In fact, I'm told that they have 4 in Coventry now. I'd like to know what plans the council have, particularly with our refuse lorries, for example, in moving to electric over the next decade in the long term. So that's also one of the motions that I've included. In conclusion, I feel when it comes to climate change, actions speak louder than words. I therefore hope these amendments I've put forward this evening will receive cross-party support. I accept we need to be realistic about what we do, and I think the amendments are realistic. I accept that planting 200 trees a minute is not realistic. 200 trees a year, perhaps, but not a minute. So these amendments, I'm hoping, will get a seconder from the Labour benches, and as I said, I formally propose.
Amendment, is there a seconder for the amendment? Councillor Wilson, thank you.
Enthusiastically support the proposed amendments. I'm not denying, and no one on this side of the chamber is denying, that there are environmental issues. Indeed, the phrase is a climate emergency. But it's all very well moving a motion to say that. Is actually what we do to back up how we deal with the issues before us. And before anyone criticises this side because, oh, it's the typical Tories, let me just say this. Some people around the chamber know that I'm actually quite an avid scuba diver. And I believe my colleague, Councillor Brown, is also an avid scuba diver as well. And I've actually seen firsthand what damage is being done to our oceans. There's actually one dive site I particularly like to go to, and it's called Pink Coral in Lanzarote. And I haven't actually been able to see it in its full bloom because the global warming and the effects of the warming sea have meant that a lot of the coral has died off, and now all you can see inside a little cavern is a little flash of pink, where some coral still survives because it's protected within that cavern. And it's my fervent wish one day to actually go, possibly, as environmentally friendly as possible, and do the Great Barrier Reef. Well, I know I haven't spoken that long. But we all know, and we've all seen on the TV, and recently we've seen it on David Attenborough's 7 Continents, One Planet, the changes which are happening and the dangers that are happening to such prizes and jewels as the Great Barrier Reef. So actually, I do take these quite seriously. And I do see the plastics floating in the ocean. More worryingly, I see the plastics floating under the ocean, where wildlife gets trapped quite often. And cans and plastic bags. And if you look at a plastic bag to a turtle, perhaps, and I've been fortunate to go diving with turtles, they look like they're like jellyfish. Thank you, Councillor Hancock. We might be able to see the difference, but to the poor turtle, they can't. We've seen recently whales beached on our oceans around the UK, and when they do the autopsy, we have seen tons of plastic in their stomachs. So no one is denying the impact that climate change is having, certainly not from these benches anyway. But there are steps we can do now to make this authority better and more proactive, which is why I support things like a climate change champion at director level. I think that's something which could be done immediately. I don't see why that couldn't be agreed tonight. I don't see why we couldn't look at the green bin charge, because it is bringing in more revenue, and if we want to encourage people to recycle more, rather than burn the carbon off into the atmosphere or let it fester on the side of the road, that is an activity we can do now. Looking at having the executive directors mandated to provide a yearly update to this council on activities we are taking, that is a step, that is an action we can say yes to tonight. And all these proposals which are on the amendment that we have put forward are strong, they are significant, and they add weight and, more importantly, action to the motion which has been put forward tonight. I am passionate about ensuring that the oceans are there for the future and all the other habitats on our planet. I'm lucky. I've actually got the qualifications and been able to go and see that firsthand. I would like future generations to be able to enjoy that too. Indeed, and I say this in all sincerity, if anyone over there wants to learn to go diving with me, and I'm sure Councillor Brown would do too, we'd be more than happy to show you some of the wonders of our oceans. But the most important thing is that we can protect those oceans for the future. I may not look like a diver, but I'm passionate about it. And I believe Councillor Chataway, bless him, he and I quite often have some vivial chats about scuba diving when I see him. And despite our political differences, it's always refreshing to have those chats with someone who I consider to be a colleague even outside of these chambers. So please, I say to all parties around this chamber tonight, please vote for these amendments. They are steps we can take now. By all means, get the working party up and running, and we will be a full and active participant in that working party. But let's back up our words with deeds and vote for this amendment tonight.
But I'm seems to be on the amendment now. I'll speak generally. We fundamentally have a climate change emergency, and we also have ecological emergencies. And I think people need to understand, and it's useful for people to understand, which things like the plastic bag are causing extinctions of wildlife and that type of emergency, and which things are actually leading to climate change emissions. And for most things, it's a bit of both. Obviously, plastic bags have emissions, but they also have a wildlife impact. But we also need to understand the big things. Plastic bags is a tiny, tiny bit of our emissions. A lot of our emissions is transport, homes, industry and agriculture. The one area the council has a lot of control over is planning and housing. We have immense amounts of emissions from our housing. We have very old housing stock, and we have some very good work undertaken with some of our insulation schemes, some of the stuff we put in insulation on the outside of homes. So we do need to understand, in terms of big impact things, it's getting our homes insulated. And it's not a political point, because I think all the political parties are now talking about a massive home insulation scheme for Britain, because that is one first step towards getting climate change emergency recognised. And if you insulate your homes, you then need less heat for then the talk about how do we heat our homes in future. So I want to make it clear, we can't just talk about plastic bags. And I know Brent has been involved in climate change for quite a while, and if we are talking about a director going forward with this, I think Brent would be an ideal person to actually take forward a champion on the director level to actually look at some of these issues. And I say it is big issues we need to do. It is the planning issues. We can't just build poor quality homes that aren't built up to building specs. And a lot of it is government. The planners can say we will have code 3, code 4 homes, but the developers are building absolute rubbish. A lot of the building regulations in this country have to change and be properly inspected, and that is a thing that government has to do. So it's a big, big journey, and the one thing I quite like about the motion, even though it's very weak for climate change, is it does say we can get experts in to talk to, and we don't need to reinvent the wheel. A lot of councils like Warwick are about 6 months ahead of us, so please learn what they're doing, and don't worry about all the making the list now, but actually understand that the list is absolutely massive. It's housing, it's flooding, it's transport, and the planning for a sustainable future is going to be very, very different to the borough plan. It's going to be talking about what we do with floodwater, how we move people around, and we haven't even got solar panels as a requirement in our plan yet for housing. We haven't yet got passive solar gain, where you build houses so they capture the sunlight, the direction you build big windows, small windows. There is just so much we need to do. And so I do hope we actually go on a learning curve and actually go from keen environmentalists with sort of that eager, I want to save the world, to actually knowledgeable people who can actually talk about the ground source heat pumps, the water harvest, and understand the several different emergencies we're getting, the extinctions and the emissions and changing of the climate. And I think one thing I would really pick up on is it's not if we don't act we will have an emergency. We have an emergency. We have the fires. Acting will slow it down. We are at the point now where we are going to, it's like on a bicycle going down a hill with no brakes. We are going to have a nasty crash. What we're doing by declaring a climate emergency is trying to put our feet down and try and slow the process. But because of the 50 or 100 year time lag, we're already facing the problems from the last 50 years of emissions. Thank you.
Mr. Brown.
Please accept this as a friendly amendment. It's what it is. It's not intended to take the credit away from the motion, which I think we broadly support. It's just that it adds some actions to the good intention. As Councillor Wilson here said, I'm a qualified scuba diver, and over the past 25 years, I've seen the effects of coral bleach, I've seen the effects of plastic pollution in the water, and we need to take action on these things. There are lots of things we can do, like zero emission homes. There's an international passive house standard. There are examples of developments built to it within Warwickshire, including social housing at Wootton Wawen. So we can learn and we can do these things. Even simple things like using glasses instead of plastic cups. We do this at the place where I work. It's really successful. And it just cuts down on waste. It's good practice. We should be doing it. Having a climate change champion within the office, again, something we do at the place where I work. And they lead by example. So we've gone out, we've cleaned up the riverbank near where we work. And it's these sort of things that get people in the workplace enthused about doing the right things. So what we're proposing here are friendly things that we would like us all collectively to take on board and actually walk the walk instead of talking the talk, and setting up a committee that comes to some nebulous conclusion at some point in the future. It's about putting some meat on the bones of that committee and making it work to some sort of actual, I was about to say concrete, but that would have been a bad word, wouldn't it? So some proper proposals that we can do. So I will support this, and I hope you do too. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Longdon.
It was all right until I read this and then picked up on 1 and 2. It's not a political point. Yes, it is, number one. And quite frankly, I don't see the mass fly tipping of green waste around the borough. I think I would have done if it was there, but I don't see it, so I don't know exactly where you're talking about for mass fly tipping and what that's causing. And it also does not take account of the effects of the green bin charge, whereby people are composting more. We don't know how many people took that option, and that would be helpful to know, but we do know that it helps with the council tax and the policies. So I wouldn't go with that at all. I'm sorry, but that's a no-no for me, because we've done that, been there, got the T-shirts and everything else, so it's not coming back as far as I'm concerned. 2, I'm not exactly sure what is meant there, but when Councillor Evans moved it, he said he wanted more trees planted on the side of the road. Well, if you do that, be careful what trees you put in. And if you want an example of what not to do, what people did years ago, want an example, come up to St Paul's Road and see the limes and the plane trees in St Paul's Road, where they kick up the pavement, they kick up the verges, they damage the water supplies, gas supplies, electric supplies, and it's a nightmare. And then trying to get something done with a mature tree later on, quite frankly, is almost mission impossible. And of course, when you do prune them, they tend to get worse root-wise, because then they're trying to re-promote their growth. So, again, until I know exactly what he means by that, I wouldn't vote for this one either. So, it's a nice try, but I'm afraid it's a no-no for me because of those two main names. The other things are a bit woolly and nitpicking, but at the end of the day, we need to do something. And we certainly need to convince Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin and the premiers of India and China that we're not reducing our carbon emissions so that they can increase theirs. But that's going to be for another place, isn't it?
Yes.
For Longdon's speech, I would like to make a point of personal explanation. If I could just clarify amendment number 2. I agree with what you're saying about trees being on the side of roads. I know, particularly in Sheffield, there's been a lot of problems with trees being on the side of roads there. But if you take places such as Abbey Green, for example, where the carbon emissions there, I believe, are well above the legal limit, actually we could look towards planting more trees on Abbey Green itself. That's just for example, but that's not for me to decide. That's for Councillor Lloyd to decide as the portfolio holder.
Sorry, did you indicate Councillor Lloyd? Okay.
For the highways, I hope to deal with, not just me. Anyway, the reason I'm not going to support this amendment is quite simple. I think you've got some valid points there, but I think they're points that should be brought up through the working party, because for every one of your points, I mean, one point was made about plastic bottles, got one here, but I do refill it, plastic glasses and things like that. To get rid of a plastic glass or plastic cup, alternatives have to be sourced. For example, we use plastic glasses to serve beer within the Civic Hall because of the shows. There's health and safety reasons why we do that. Those glasses could be replaced, but we need to replace them. We need to source the right material. It's no good putting paper in there or cardboard, because then you're looking at trees. So we have to look very carefully at it. And you're quite right. Somebody said about learning from other authorities. We should be learning from other authorities. And that's what this is all about. I don't think 4 months is a long time, any stretch of the imagination. I think that's pace. I think it's quite good. And when you're looking at an authority as big as this, and all the materials it uses across the authority, then I think, and beyond, because we're talking parks, we're talking everywhere, transportation, everything's in the melting pot. So it all has a cost, all has an on-cost. We all have to resource other things. So I'm not going to support the motion, the amendment to the motion, sorry. I'm going to support the motion because that gives it a little bit more time to actually do the correct piece of work and not rush it.
Sorry, Councillor Welland-Nash.
What I've been listening to tonight, we do have a climate change problem, and these are quite valid ideas. They're not set in stone, but I think we should make an effort. And I have to say, from the other side of the house tonight, all I've heard is no, 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 no. We do need more trees. Jeremy Corbyn plans to plant 20 million trees he wants to plant, and yet all we hear is no, because of the roots, this, that and the other. Okay? There are certain trees that obviously won't be planted on the side of a road, and that one is a huge oak perhaps, but there are other options. But the spirit behind the idea is that we improve our air quality around the area, we improve the environment, we have all got to take responsibility. And surely there's none better place to start than in the town hall by councillors, by ourselves. So, maybe glass isn't such a good idea, but we can use recyclable cardboard if we are talking about health and safety. There are other options, and we have to discuss these. Just because we're sitting on this side of the house and we're saying, we've got this plan, but you have to immediately vote us down. I find that, irresponsible. What we're trying to do is say there is a climate change. What can we, as a local council, do to improve the quality of our town, our villages, our children's lives every day? And I have to say, as councillors, it starts with us. We are going to be the example for where we live. So, if it means reducing the green bin, fine, let's reduce the green bin if it means that other people are going to use it more and more. We have got to be examples to our children, to our grandchildren. And I will say again, it makes me quite sad tonight to listen almost that you have to oppose us even if you know that we're right in doing what we're saying. Okay? So, I, for one, okay, we can discuss this, but a cross-party council would be great. At some point, we have got to sign up and be honest that we have got a problem and we can be part of the answer to it. Okay.
Councillor Lloyd.
Thanks for explanation rising from the previous speaker. I have not said no, no, no. On the contrary, I think we should move forward, but not on a whim, not on a piece of paper first shown tonight to members in this chamber. We should be done properly. I don't think, I said I didn't think that 4 months was bad. It is pace, and that all the suggestions that they are making should go to that working party and be discussed properly, not just implemented tonight on a whim.
Councillor Hancock.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I would say to Councillor Llewellyn-Nash, don't be sad about this. If there's anything to be sad about, it's that it's maybe taken us this long to debate it. But I think there's a positive in the very fact that we are debating it. And I actually do think a lot of these points are very valid, as lots of other points are valid. It's how you implement them. It's how you do that. And I think that's the whole purpose of the working party. And I say that, and I'd like it, I'd like a working party, or what do we call the other one, but it'd be a limited time one where you come into that and you make sure you do your work within that 3-month period, and then something's reported back. But I've got lots of other things that I'd like to include as well, which I would have put to the working party. Things like the county council have got to be a big player in this as well, because they're responsible for the highways. I would personally like to see lots more curbside recharging points. Actually, our neighbours across the boundary, Coventry City Council, have been very proactive. If you go down Stony Stanton Road, Fosal Road, Old Brooks, they've got curbside recharging points. So they're very proactive in it. Our own council, because that's what you've spoken about, and I've already raised it, hoping that the planning department will look into our design guidance, because, when you've got new developments coming on board, surely it's time now that we should be saying to them, you should have recharging points built into those properties. Yes, there's issues about that, because there's all different types of charging. There's not a universal charging point type at the moment, so there's issues around that. But we should be looking to build that into our planning guidance. But they're all things that I think should be discussed, so there can be more detail and evidence brought in at that working party. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Right, I have no more speakers, so Councillor Jackson, can I ask you to respond, please?
I am replying to the amendment, as I think the mover of the original motion has the right to do. Madam Mayor, the amendment that has been put to Council today is a shopping list, but it is not necessarily the correct shopping list. It's not necessarily in the right priority order. And I think one of the advantages of the original motion is that we actually will have the power to call in those people who may have some expertise to actually advise us as to whether some of these are correct, or whether there are some other measures we may take that prioritise and are more appropriate for us as a council. It seems to me we need to make sure we are using the resources of this council to best effect, and that is getting the biggest buck for our bang, so to speak. We need to make sure that what we prioritise is right, and that is precisely the remit of that cross-party working party. I look forward to a swift report back. I have to vote against the amendment because I am not an expert who knows if the 8 points here are the best way of this council achieving a carbon neutral footprint by 2030 or not. What I want is the opportunity for a cross-party working party that has the ability to ask those who know far more about this issue than probably most of us in the room to actually get some detailed guidance. So, Madam Mayor, on this occasion, not out of any other reason, but I want us to make the right decisions, I will be voting against the amendment.
We will be moving to the amendment. Can I see all those? Okay, yeah. Okay, thank you. Simone?
If you could please indicate for or against the amendment, please. Councillor Beaumont. Councillor Brindley Edwards, apologies. Councillor Brown.
For.
Councillor Croft.
For.
Councillor Daffin. Councillor Doherty. Councillor Elliott. Councillor Evans.
For.
Councillor Guzzain has left the room. Councillor Glass.
Against.
Councillor Golby. Councillor Garan. Councillor Gutteridge. Councillor Hancox.
Against.
Councillor Hocking. Councillor Jackson. Councillor Condacor. Councillor Llewellyn-Nash. Councillor Lloyd. Councillor Longdon. Councillor Pandair. Councillor Phillips. Councillor Pomfret. Councillor Rudkin. Councillor A. Sargent. Councillor J. Sargent. Councillor J. Shepherd. Councillor T. Shepherd. Councillor Smith. Councillor Tandy.
Against.
Councillor Tromans. Councillor Walmsley, apologies. Councillor Watkins. Councillor Wilson.
Just give us a minute. The amendment is lost by 15 votes to 12. I will then move to voting for the original notice of motion. All those in favour, please show.
It's the debate.
Pardon?
You're moving to the substantive motion, it's open debate.
Okay. It's a substantive motion. We will move to a further debate. Does anyone have any wish to speak? Councillor Evans.
I don't think we lost by 15 votes. I think it was 3. But
you lost by 15 votes to 12, Councillor Evans.
I do apologise. I do apologise, Madam Mayor. I made a mistake. I do apologise. I'm actually quite disappointed, really. I didn't want this to become political. But, I mean, I don't quite understand. I mean, I'll support the substantive motion, but I don't really see the point now of having a working group if you're not even willing to ban single-use plastics in the borough, in town hall buildings. I actually admit, I actually just copied this motion from Councillor Adam Farrell in North Warwickshire, okay, who proposed this at a North Warwickshire Borough Council meeting, okay? Now,
carry on.
Yeah, so I'd just like to make the point that this is being done cross-party. And, you know, I'll vote for a working group, but what's the point if you're just going to sit there, you're not even willing to ban single-use plastics on council premises? You said. But, okay, I'll carry on, if I may. With regards to the bottle situation, I quite agree. I think having glasses in the audience would be clearly against health and safety legislation. I've been to a number of gigs and whatnot where Christ knows what would happen if you had glasses flying around the place. But Councillor Llewellyn-Nash makes a logical point. You know, at the moment, they get a Coca-Cola bottle and they pour it into a plastic cup. we could look to using a glass bottle and then putting it into a recyclable cardboard cup. With regards, I agree with Councillor Hancock about the charging points, particularly in Bedworth. I think the county actually does need to do more on that. I think it was last month at the Cabinet meeting, I think they did actually adopt a electric charging point strategy, or I don't know what it's called exactly, but I agree the county do need to do more on that, and I very much hope that they're going to move on with that. And I just think it's sad that, you know, our own biodiversity champion, Councillor Beaumont, has voted against this. You know, it's unbelievable. It really is. But I just can't get my head around why you're going out there. Your council is sharing loads of these things on Twitter saying 200 more trees a minute or whatever. You've just voted against it. Hypocrites, the lot of you.
Councillor Wilson, please. And I would remind the amendment. Councillor Wilson.
I do find it is regrettable, as Councillor Evans has said, about refusing the amendment. And I think it's quite telling, actually, that there were members on the opposite side who abstained, on that rather than just vote against. I think it shows, actually, there is possibly more of a willingness to investigate some of the ideas we put forward than the front bench opposite. We will vote for this, but a working party only has so many powers. Councillor Jackson referred to being able to bring people in to give evidence. Well, I know it's been a while since she served on scrutiny, and I know that they are themselves responsible for abolishing the post of scrutiny officer, but Shirley, who was actually, in my view, an excellent scrutiny officer and helped us tremendously, and I think that was cutting off our nose despite our faces, she actually maintained a document of actually which parties, which public bodies we are actually able to compel to come before overview and scrutiny. Not all of the parties that we need to be able to bring to the table for the working party we can compel. In fact, we can compel, but more often than not they give us the proverbial two-finger salute and don't even engage with us. And we've certainly found that, certainly with health authorities over the years when we've been on overview and scrutiny, that we invite them time and time again, and yet they don't turn up. We have had that. To be fair to the George Eliot, they have started engaging with us over the past few years, but historically the trend has been from health bodies, and health is going to be a big thing about this, because it is a side effect of some of the issues surrounding climate change, that it also has a massive impact on health. If we can't compel the health bodies to come and speak to us, how can we compel the actual technical scientists to come and speak to us from universities, from colleges, etc., etc.? So there are flaws in Councillor Jackson's comments to begin with, yet the proposals that they have just voted down would, in the main, not have required any expenditure, but could have taken definitive action now. Why can't we appoint an executive director or a director to take overall responsibility for climate change now? That is something that we could have agreed on. I would have moved it as an amendment. If you can't agree to points 1 and 2, why couldn't you agree to points 3 through 8?
Councillor Wilson,
that's the shame.
I have to remind you, we're speaking to the proposal and not the amendment.
And I am speaking to the proposal in that it isn't as robust and effective as it could be. We will vote for it, but it is the second best option, Madam Mayor. And as we have said, climate change is one of the top priorities for many people. And it has, to be fair to many of the people around the country, grown in significance and stature. But giving them the second best option on such an important issue is not the best option this council should be taking. And I think it's an indictment that the party opposite cannot actually show the leadership required to do this. Because actually, you put an arbitrary time limit on it. Is 4 months going to give you all the necessary information that you need to make what you call an informed decision? Many of what we have suggested tonight could have been done immediately without needing much additional thought or action. They would have been steps in the right direction. Yet again, we've been let down by Labour, and we've had a lack of leadership in this chamber.
I'm really sad we're going into this place. We should have had a pre-meeting and decided between all the parties here what we can all vote for to do now and what we will have to take to a working party to see the details of. It is really sad with getting into you voted for this, you voted against that yet again. The motion we have is a really sensible first step. A lot of Kyle's ideas are sensible ideas. But we're in a mess again because people are saying you voted against this, you vote. And quite often we have in the Green Party a thing where we vote in parts. So we go down a list and we don't have to do an en bloc vote. One of the problems we've got now is there's 8 things sabotaged onto the meeting without notice, well-meaning things. Yeah, I voted for them because they were worthy things to actually try and do. But yet again, we're going down a hole. Can we please try and have a constructive dialogue outside political meetings where actually we try and work out what we can do quickly? Yeah, I'm sure most people would realise that we need a director in charge of this stuff. It is not rocket science. And if we don't group everything together, if we actually say, is this a good idea, is that a good idea, we could progress some of these things almost immediately. I'm really, really keen we go move forward. We are 6 months behind other councils. This is the very first motion from Labour that I've managed to sign. I'm very proud to sign it, because although it's not perfect, it's a start. And this is the first time we've had a meeting where everyone agrees who's speaking that we've got a climate change problem. And I do hope we now work on this working group and on experts. Experts want to come and talk to us. We only need to ask people. Yeah, if you're an energy expert or a housing efficiency expert, yeah, we have people who want to come and tell us what we need to put in our planning documents. We have a will there in the general public and experts to try and solve climate change. So please, I hope there's not going to be all sorts of tweets after this meeting saying, you voted for this, you voted against that, and actually we move forward today and actually have a productive working party.
Andy Sargent.
I think there's a lot of skill in this room as well. So, one of the things that I've done at the County Council is be part of the climate change working group. And a lot of the good ideas came from members and officers that attend them meetings. And there are simple things. I mean, I think most of the points on there I would agree with, and I think they're really good. But I think, to get a proper working group, we need to brainstorm and get a wider variety of ideas. And there are things we can do ourselves by taking action. So we can stop our single-use plastics ourselves, can't we? We can bring our own cups to fill our water. We can bring coffee cups to fill, to get our coffee rather than the cardboard cups. So I don't think there's nothing we can do ourselves. We can take action today because we can stop using the plastic cups. I'm just looking around at the plastic bottles and the plastic cups that are here now and thinking, well, actually, we could have done something about that today, couldn't we? And we can lead by example, can't we? We are councillors. We're supposed to lead by example. So we can do that ourselves while we're in our own communities. So I think a lot of the points that Councillor Evans put forward are really good. I do believe that, when a climate change committee or working group is set up, is that, that will go further and there will be further elements put into that that will make that better going forward. And I know from the point of view from what Warwickshire County Council are doing, there's some excellent ideas there that we could pick out and use ourselves as well.
Sorry, where was that from? Councillor Evans. What is your point of order, please? Could you state which point of order you're speaking to?
I can't say which page exactly because 1,000 pages in the Constitution, but I wanted to ask, would it be constitutional of me to hand this to Councillor Jackson and she wants to propose it, so it's in the Labour group's name?
Councillor Evans. Councillor Evans, please. Councillor Evans discussed your amendment and it did not go through. So could you please allow the debate to continue? Councillor Lloyd, please.
Well, there you're political over this, because this is not a political issue. It's not a political issue. You're quite right, and it shouldn't be political. So I'm not going to make it political. I actually agree, God, with Councillor Condacor and what he said, the vast majority of what he said. It's sensible. You know, by having this committee, this subcommittee, actually, this working party, actually working on this over a period of time, is a good thing. I'll say again, so certain councillors over there, not all, just certain, it just seems the same one that's jumping up, point of order all the time, but to those councillors over there, we haven't on this side said no, no, no. What we're saying is yes, bring it on. We want to have a look at this and we want to do it properly. We're not going to make a decision on the whim. I want the evidence. I want to see the information. And at the end of the 4 month, it doesn't mean during that 4 month period or 3 month period that the group runs for, that if things come out of that working party that have been actually put forward by council members, officers or other bodies, irrespective, if good things come out of that and we can implement them straight away, as long as we've got the alternatives to implement, then yeah, we start doing it as soon as possible. And if that means that we have to get rid of a load of stock rather than carry on using plastic or carry on using cardboard that isn't recyclable, then so be it. We'll have to buy new stock, but we need to source that stock. So if things come up through this meeting that we need to do, or can do there and then, we'll do it, but we'll do it with the proper information, not something that's been tabled on such an important issue like this on the night for nobody to see. So that's why I never supported that, and that's why I'm supporting this motion. This motion is the correct way to do things, with the correct information. It's not political. Stop making it political.
Thank you. I have 3 more speakers left, and I will be going to the vote after they have spoken. Councillor Watkins.
Yeah. The reason I'm speaking about this is because I do find it important, and for those people who are on my Facebook, they will know that I am a bit of a greenie, actually, as much as you might not think I am. But I don't think that planting millions of trees is the answer. I do think that we could do other things like living walls, living roofs, things like that, and we are going through 2 town centre regenerations, so we could pull them into the design of that. As Councillor Hancock says, planning by design, we need to look at that. The reason that I didn't vote for yours was because there was only one thing on there that I actually agreed with. The electric vehicles, everybody's jumping up and down about it. It depends what programme you watch or what advice you listen to. That's why I want a cross-working party, and I'd love to go on it. But electric vehicles, the programme I saw, where it was taking everything off the ocean, Councillor Wilson, that you should know about, is not looking good for the bottom of the ocean, because they reckon they've got to take so much more of it from the bottom of the ocean, it's going to destroy all the ocean. And then what do we do with batteries when they've done? Where do we get rid of them? What do? We ever looked at the weight of the cars? Because it's 2-3 times more heavier than the cars we've got now. Wouldn't be able to be causing more damage to the roads and things like that. You cannot rush into this like that. That's why I couldn't vote for your motion, because, like I say, there is only one thing on there that I could agree with. Let's get a cross-working party. Let's get some professionals in, or some experts, and let's have a look at some things. We've got a weir out the back. Perhaps get some electricity coming off that. There's lots of things we could look at. But we've got something going with parks, where you can ask for different things to be built in that. I've put my suggestions in. My suggestions might not get listened to, but you've got your chance to put your suggestions in, and you've got your chance to put your suggestions in on a cross-working party. So I suggest that if you are interested in it, then put your name down. I'll be trying to get my name down. That's all I'm saying. Thank you.
It was all going so well, wasn't it? Until this comes up. And then we go through the process of spin, innuendos and lies, which is usual from over there when you can't get their own way. And quite frankly, it gets to be so boring just because you can't get your own way. Then you start to blame us, say that we're useless and we're not doing things and we don't want to do things. Rubbish. Rubbish. It was mentioned earlier, if these things were put into the working party, they get considered. Fine. There's no problem with that. It's just that you want them tomorrow. Well, life isn't like that. Life is not like that at all. You cannot just say, come on a whim and say, I want to do this, and single-use plastic. Nobody mentions single-use plastics, or we're against taking out single-use plastics over this side. Nobody at all. That's your spin, and your innuendo and your lies. And had I known you were going to have a dicky fit and throw your teddy out the pan, I would have bought Brian Hawkes' teddy, and you could have chucked it on the table. Then I could have given it to Councillor Wilson, and he could have chucked it on the table as well. Because that's the way it's looking. So childish and stupid that you can't see the wood for the trees. Let's just start planting them.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Lies, childish, stupid, innuendo, spin, respect in public life. It was going well, wasn't it? I will support the motion because this is important stuff, and we've heard some really good things tonight. We've heard some really important things and some good ideas coming out. Great. But Councillor Evans's frustration is understandable. It's very dear to his heart, but more than that, it's dear to the public's heart, and the public have a lack of confidence in this council delivering on its promises. In fact, it's seen a track record of failing to deliver time and time again. So you'll forgive members over here or any side of the chamber for wanting to put forward concrete proposals to do at least something now to set the tone and start some momentum moving the whole thing forward, rather than having what sounds like a lot of, it's not the way we do it, we're going to kick this into the long grass, we're going to have a working party that will do something sometime. The public's heard all that before. I mean, you know, we've heard so many times in the past in this council the need for training, and that was rejected. Then we've heard about, when we voted on it, about 7 months ago, the immediate review of the borough plan housing numbers. And tonight the portfolio holder has said, I have no idea, quote unquote, when we will actually get and start that.
Councillor Tromans, would you please stay with the item under discussion?
Indeed. So again, this item, it promises a lot, but will it get delivered on? That is the concern raised by my colleagues and by the public, and for very good track record reasons, as I've just alluded to. So I hope it's not just words, like it's been the case so many times before. I hope something really does get done this time, because it's all on video now, the press is recording it, and I hear you say, we're not saying no, we're saying yes, but if you like, you know, we can have the recorded vote read back. You didn't say yes, you voted against it, all round this room. So I hear all these people saying, I like that, or when I like that, yeah, well, there was your chance. But the record says you voted against it. So we hear you again now saying all these words, but will the record prove that you're just the same as last time and did nothing? Remember, you're judged on what happens, not what's said. Councillor Wilson said at the start of this meeting tonight, oh, there was only 3 of us once. Yeah, well, there's more than 3 of us now, because you're judged on what you do, not what you say. Thank you.
Does Councillor Jackson, would you like to wind up the debate?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would remind the last speaker that actually it is members on this side of the chamber who signed this motion, because it is so vitally important to our children and grandchildren's lives that we act. So it is members here that signed this motion. If Councillor Tromans wanted, he could have put in a motion to council in a similar vein. The reality is, no such motion has been printed on an agenda signed by himself. So this is leadership. This is clear leadership on such a massive issue. And it is really important that we move forward with this. It's very clear we are going to have a working party. It will report back in 4 months. It has the ability to ask for external advice to that meeting, as do other people. And I trust that because this is such an important issue, people may take up that opportunity to come along and to help us to form recommendations that Cabinet will consider in due course. I've stuck to the substantive motion, Madam Mayor, but other members opposite have continued to talk about the amendment that was proposed. So I'm very briefly going to say the reason I didn't vote for that amendment is because I'm not sure that the 8 points listed there are those that are going to make the most improvement as we move forward to a zero carbon footprint for this council in 2030. But if we have time to sit down in a mutually respectful way and really gather all of the evidence and utilise the skills of both members and people outside who may have other skills to offer, we hopefully will be in a position where Cabinet receives a report with recommendations that are well informed, and Cabinet will consider those. That's what we're being asked to do tonight. So it's incumbent on every single member in this room, if they vote for this, to see that there is a report to Cabinet in 4 months' time and that Cabinet duly consider those recommendations. I so move that we move straight to the vote. Thank you.
Thank you. All those in favour of the proposal, please. Thank you. I believe that to be unanimous. Thank you. So we move then to the second notice of motion, which is transforming Bedworth cross-party working group. Councillor Wilson.
Being aware of the time, it is 9:15. Can I move a suspension of standing orders to enable business to be conducted? And I say also to include the questions, because there are only 4, and I believe that members should also have the opportunity to ask their questions on subjects which aren't within the agenda itself. So I would move a suspension of standing orders to complete tonight's business in full.
We have, this is only the... Do you have a seconder for that? Sorry. Okay. Taking that we do only have one further notice of motion, I'm quite happy to extend standing orders till the close of business.
Got 4 questions. Got 4 questions.
Including the questions.
Can you take a vote?
Is everyone in favour of that proposal? Please show. That is carried. Councillor Wilson, sorry.
Fine. I'm actually quite pleased as a Nuneaton member to move, as a member who represents Nuneaton ward, to move the transforming Bedworth motion tonight. Indeed, many members, hopefully if they have long memories, will know that when we have always discussed transforming Nuneaton, I have always said that when a transforming Bedworth option comes forward, I will always be more than happy to consider that. And so I'm actually quite pleased to have drafted and put forward the motion tonight. We had the presentation from the head of town centres about the visioning document before it went to Cabinet. And I remember asking him the specific question, are there any proposals to have a transforming Bedworth, or call it what you like, I've just picked transforming Bedworth, so that Bedworth is shown to be as equal to Nuneaton in this borough. to have a Transforming Bedworth working party along a similar vein as the Transforming Nuneaton one, to ensure that these proposals, this menu of options on the table for the residents of Bedworth, and actually the wider community, because other people do go and use Bedworth. My nan lives in Whitestone, but actually she spent 30 odd years living in Bedworth when she moved over from Birmingham. She still goes and shops in Bedworth. So a lot of people around our borough go and shop in Bedworth. So it is of borough-wide importance. But I was shocked to hear that the answer was no. And as someone, and I declare an interest as someone who is on the Transforming Nuneaton Working Party, as are Councillor Phillips and Councillor Jackson, we are actually closely monitoring the actions of Transforming Nuneaton. We are making suggestions as to how we can move things forward as quickly as possible, and we are holding officers to account and trying to move things forward in the interest of Nuneaton. But it is my firm belief that just as much as we do that for Nuneaton, we must do that for Bedworth. It is only fair, it is only right, and it is only responsible, especially when we look at the package of proposals on the table for what could be done around the town centre in Bedworth, and the options that are there. Some may come forward, some may not. They are options at the moment. And there is a consultation exercise ongoing with residents, which I feel is slightly defective, but there is a consultation. So I think if we are serious about showing that we mean business about regenerating both our town centres, then we ought to, as a council collectively, vote for a Transforming Bedworth Working Party and invite Warwickshire County Council to join as equal participants, as we have done with Transforming Nuneaton. So I'm more than happy to move this, Madam Mayor. I hope it will get cross-party support, because the longer we leave these things, the more they fall back on, and we lose sight of them and they go off the radar. And we, as much as we are fearful of that happening with Transforming Nuneaton, which is why we keep pushing for all these things, we must also make sure we have our foot on the gas with Bedworth too. It's not impossible for this council to be able to do that, as well as looking at Transforming Nuneaton. So I move the motion, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Jackson.
I'm more than happy to second this motion and would suggest to Councillor Wilson that he actually talks to the relevant portfolio holder about what their intentions are. I have every intention of making sure that we give equal precedence to Bedworth. If he'd have spoken to me as the relevant policy decision maker in the authority, he would have had a clear answer from me. So, Madam Mayor, I am more than happy to agree entirely with this, and would suggest that Councillor Wilson does take the opportunity, if ever he is concerned about the policy direction of this council in regard to town centres, to talk to me. Bedworth is a very important town in our borough. We have two towns, we have Nuneaton and we have Bedworth. We think they are both special. We also, before two councillors, one on either side of the chamber, mention it, we have a lovely village in Bulkington, and we have many other areas throughout our borough that are very important to us too. And we want to maximise the opportunities for that. And I think I, as the Cabinet member with responsibility for town centres, have led by example of working in partnership with Warwickshire County Council and others, because regeneration by its very nature is not done by one authority. It is done in partnership with the County Council and indeed with other public sector authorities and, importantly, the private sector. So I have absolutely no problem in seconding this proposal, because frankly it would have occurred in any event, as that is my policy direction to this authority. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Intention of taking a long debate on this item, especially bearing in time the fact that I have just agreed to extend standing orders to include the questions. So unless anyone has anything major that they may wish to say on this, I will be going to the vote. I have two speakers indicated That is Councillor Evans and Councillor Condicle, and they are the only two speakers I will be saying, other than Councillor Wilson winding up the debate. Councillor Evans.
Madam Mayor, if my group leader permits, I would like to just make a very, very small amendment. I don't want it to be debated for half an hour. Just if we can go straight to a vote, that would be much appreciated. And if Wendy would like to hand it out, I do think that the consultation the consultation should be extended slightly by 2 weeks, because it does go over the Christmas period, and of course there's a general election, which I won't go into because I know we've heard of, but I do think it should be extended by 2 weeks. I don't think it's controversial, just asking 2 weeks, and also that we do hold two public consultation events at the Bedworth Civic Hall, like we've done with the Borough Plan, just so members of the public can go and ask officers questions. So I formally move this.
Is there a seconder for the amendment?
For an amendment to go like this, but I would second that. We are in...
Before you make any further progress, is the seconder of the original amendment prepared to accept this amendment? Of the further amendment? Yes, I'm asking you the question, Councillor Jackson. Just can I agree to accept it? I have to ask the seconder. Yes, I have to ask the seconder if she agrees to the amendment.
To agree to the amendment, can I say, because I think the first paragraph is factually incorrect, the consultation in regard to the Bedworth visioning document will in any event go over Christmas and the general election, so I think that is a moot point. And holding two public consultation events, I've already said that I don't think large public meetings are the way to go forward with this. I believe it is individual ones, so I think it would be inappropriate for me to agree to something that I've already stated this evening I don't believe to be the best form of consultation.
Now what? Sorry, I need to take advice.
Julie's not accepting it's a friendly amendment. It's been put forward and seconded, so you move to debate on the amendment. It has to be debated.
As well as Kyle's amendment. Whose amendment am I debating?
There's only one amendment, so we've got the motion that was already put forward.
So I've got to debate Kyle's amendment.
It's been seconded.
Right. Okay. The advice I have been given, which I accept, is that we will have to debate the second amendment. But again, I will reiterate, I have no intention of taking a whole length of speakers on this item, considering I've already agreed that we will take the questions at the end. So, Councillor Evans, we are debating your amendment as I speak. Pardon?
Yeah. So you can, if you want to vote on the amendment, that's what I want to do.
Right, okay. So what we will do now, I am advised, is we will take the vote on the amendment. All those in favour?
If Councillor Wilson has his right.
Sorry, Councillor Wilson, you have a right, sorry.
I am disappointed by Councillor Jackson's reply. I am not surprised, given the track record of this authority of doing consultations over holiday periods. What is the harm in extending a consultation to enable the most number of people to put in their responses to what is a vitally important visioning document for the future of one of our major areas in the borough, Bedworth Town Centre? We have got the Christmas period, Boxing Day, New Year. People are not going to be focusing, with the best will in the world, necessarily, on a consultation from the council. They are going to be focusing on, if they remember to go and vote on December the 12th, then they're going to be wondering about getting Christmas dinner sorted and Christmas presents, this, that and the other. Then they're going to be wondering how I'm going to get through New Year. And then they start to think about all the other peripheral issues. So it is only fair and right that we give people the maximum amount of opportunity to respond to a consultation. Are you afraid of what additional answers you might get in those 2 weeks? Those answers may actually be beneficial to you. And having a consultation event at the Civic Hall, that may be your preferred style of consulting, Councillor Jackson. But speaking as someone who actually, and I thank the portfolio holder and the executive director, head of paid service, for agreeing to have an additional consultation event on the SPDs in my area. Actually, that was extremely well attended. There were at least over, I would say, about 150 people turn up throughout the course of that SPD document. Nearly 200. That's 200 people more who wouldn't have got to see the plans for that area compared to those who would have just let it go. So why are you afraid to let them have it at the Civic Hall? Actually, the Civic Hall should be a prime example of a best location somewhere within the town centre where we have the footfall for people to go in and see, people who may be going into book shows, people may be going in to use the bistro, they may just see a map of Bedworth with some change on and go, oh, I'm interested in that. What's wrong with you? Why don't you want to get more people involved? The amount of money we're talking for putting on 2 consultation events at the Civic Hall, which is open most of the day anyway, is a pittance in comparison to making sure we get this consultation right and the future of Bedworth right. I just don't understand the logic from a party which is allegedly so committed to listening to the residents of Bedworth, to not allowing the residents of Bedworth to have longer for their say and to give them more of an opportunity to see what's on offer. Not everyone accesses consultations by the internet or by coming here or by having to rely on friends and family.
Councillor Wilson.
Shame on you.
Councillor Wilson. Thank you. I'm moving to the vote on the amendment moved by Councillor Evans. All those in... OK, sorry, Simone.
Please indicate for or against the amendment. Councillor Beaumont.
Against.
Councillor Brinley-Edwards, apologies. Councillor Brown.
For.
Councillor Croft.
For.
Councillor Daffin. Councillor Doughty. Councillor Elliott. Councillor Evans.
For.
Councillor Gazane is left. Councillor Glass.
Against.
Councillor Golby. Councillor Gran. Councillor Gutteridge.
For.
Councillor Hancock.
Against.
Councillor Hocking. Councillor Jackson. Councillor Condacore.
For.
Councillor Llewellyn-Nash.
For.
Councillor Lloyd.
Against.
Councillor Longdon.
Against.
Councillor Pandair.
For.
Councillor Phillips.
Against.
Councillor Pomfret.
Against.
Councillor Rudkin. Councillor A. Sargent.
For.
Councillor J. Sargent. Councillor J. Shepherd. Councillor T. Shepherd. Councillor Smith.
For.
Councillor Tandy.
Against.
Councillor Tromans.
For.
Councillor Walmsley, apologies. Councillor Watkins.
Against.
And Councillor Wilson.
For.
OK. The amendment is lost. The amendment is lost, so I'm going to move immediately to the vote on the notice of motion. All those in favour of the notice of motion, please show. Those against? Any abstentions? Thank you. So we will move then to the final item on the agenda, which is questions from members. Pardon?
Speak.
Councillor Evans, your question, please.
On the last recorded vote, be recorded in the
Councillor
minutes.
Evans, could you just ask your question without the cynicism at the beginning of it, please?
The Constitution says I'm allowed to ask my...
Could you ask your question, please, Councillor Evans?
Going against the Constitution here, Madam Mayor, but OK. The Council have recently abolished their planning portal and brought in a new complicated system where councillors and residents are unable to view essential maps and planning documents. Already since its launch, I've been contacted by 18 residents of the Slough ward who are bitterly angry that the council have, in effect, banned them from viewing the necessary documents needed to respond to planning consultations. Can I ask the portfolio holder why my request for the communications team to create a video showing people how to use the new system has been denied, and why the council have refused to scrap the system and go back to the old one, which worked perfectly fine?
Refer the councillor back to my original answer a few hours ago to Mr Downs. The planning area of the council's website previously sat within an environment that was no longer supported by Microsoft. which meant that updates to its security and other functions were no longer available and would therefore be vulnerable in terms of attack. It also means that the Council's public services network compliance was restricted. The new system directly interrogates the Council's planning back office system without any need for details to be exported and uploaded to the website. The new facility does allow for the viewing of plans, which is automatic for all the applications submitted since the system changed. With the others, and due to data protection legislation, the details have to be first redacted. This is obviously very resource intensive and is why at the moment there is a request button on the portal that allows customers to expedite the uploading of any particular application can be therefore fast-tracked. There was a technical error when the system first went live, where when searching by address and then selecting relevant application, the documents associated with the application were not showing. But I do understand, as I said earlier, that this is now resolved. And I have requested that the application yet to be determined, as I said earlier, are redacted, as well as the larger, older applications, as these are the ones we have most requests for. Unfortunately, it is very time consuming. The changes do need to bed in, and at this particular moment in time, I don't think, Councillor Evans, there is a need for a YouTube video.
Thank you.
The video of the last full council meeting held in September 2019 was uploaded to the council's YouTube page late. The council stated the delay was in order that legal advice could be taken prior to uploading the video. Can the leader of the council please inform me how much that legal advice cost the council and therefore the taxpayer, and whether she believes this was an effective use of taxpayers' money?
Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The initial costs were about £200. However, to ensure that Council had a clear picture of the issues, further details were obtained, which required additional clarification of the potential claims that could be brought against the Council for publishing defamatory material. The final cost of the advice was £1,650. As for whether taking legal advice on a matter that might lead to a claim against the Council, costing tens of thousands of pounds, yes, I do believe that this was an effective use of Council taxpayers' money. What would have been better, though, is that the issue had never occurred in the first place. To that end, I would ask all members to be mindful of their comments at Council and to avoid making any unguarded statements that might expose the Council to legal challenge, and to use the appropriate authorities to refer concerns to.
Llewellyn Nash.
Last month, myself, Councillor Graham and Councillor Evans, and we'd been out most of the Saturday, and we were deciding where to go for lunch. So we thought, we'll try out the Civic Hall Bistro. But we were told that the Civic Hall Bistro doesn't open on a Saturday, which is a clear contradiction to what the website states. When the Civic Hall and the Bistro continue to lose money every financial year, I have to ask myself why the Bistro doesn't open on Saturdays, the time of the week you could expect a restaurant to make a profit when a lot of people go shopping and use the market. Labour are running the Bistro into the ground. Why not ahead of the budget setting try and put the Civic Hall Bistro out to tender?
Thank you. Let me do some clarification. Neither the Civic Hall or the Bistro are losing money. Councillors set the policy and monitor that policy. It's not for me or any political party's role to run the everyday operations of the Civic Hall. That's why the council pays a manager. Trading on the Saturday was not financially viable. And I can vouch for that because I used to use it every Saturday. I took the mother-in-law up there. And there was about 8 people in there. Moving to the new trading days, the predicted income is £3,000, above the initial projected budget. This is sound financial management on behalf of the manager, Tim Norton. Surely, the first call of action is to notify the duty manager or the Civic Hall manager of the mistake on the website. It's not right. The member of staff that made the mistake should be the first to hear of it on social media. Councillor Evans went straight to Twitter on the 16th of the 11th, 19, at 13:24 p.m, but then did not formalise a complaint by email until 19:58 on the 16th of the 11th, 19. So, I can only come to the conclusion that the timeline of the complaint gave staff no opportunity, sorry, I get out of breath, I do apologise, to answer or be corrected on the website. And that this type of action by the Conservatives is actually gutter politics that is continuously undermining the management and staff hard work at the Civic Hall. It's not just an attack on me, but an attack on them. Misleading the public, they should be ashamed of themselves. I suspect, and I apologise if I'm wrong now, they knew the website was wrong before they even went there. And the whole thing sounds to me like a political stunt.
Sir Evans.
If I could just clarify, Councillor Lloyd, on the Saturday evening, probably around 5 o'clock-ish, it was dark at the time, I did actually contact your home phone, and it may have been your wife. It was a lady who asked and said you wasn't in. So I did contact you about it on the evening, but you know, you may not have been in, you may have been doing other stuff. I accept that you're not always going to be in, but I would make the point that we did actually look on the website before. It said it was open on Saturday. That's why we went, because it said it was open on Saturday. But you would expect, you know, the management of the Civic Hall to look at their website regularly and ease out these mistakes, which are quite simple mistakes, really.
Your clock, or thereabouts. I agree with that. After you went on Twitter.
Or Councillor Keith Condacore, please.
The Borough Council's door and window contract is reported to be worth £2.5 million and has the potential to provide considerable improvement to the warmth and well-being of our residents. However, in cases where the doors and windows are not properly installed, the homes can become cold, expensive to heat and unhealthy. It is therefore vital that the quality of the work is monitored and tested for drafts and heat loss. What testing does the council do to ensure the proper installation and fillers have been installed around the new doors and windows, and how many complaint/rectification notices have been issued since the contract has started? Thank you.
The council is investing significantly in its existing housing stock, the window replacement programme being just one of this example. The council is installing new double glazed windows across its housing stock to improve the security, health and well-being of our tenants. The installation of new windows also contributes to a reduction in the heat loss from the home, subsequently helping to reduce energy bills and reduce carbon emissions. The glazing contract is overseen by a dedicated clerk of the works who carries out regular site visits, to inspect the works whilst the installation is in progress. Clerk of the Works also completes a final sign-off on each individual property. The sign-off is to ensure the quality of the work and to pick up any snagging requirements, as expected in all major installations. No rectification notices have been necessary, with only a small number of recalls for snagging and rectifications. The returned satisfaction questionnaires identify that there is a positive response to the works from our tenants, with the majority returning a rating of good and very good. So I hope that answers your questions, and thank you for noticing that we are spending a lot of money on our stock and our residents.
That concludes this evening's meetings. Could I take this opportunity to wish all of you a very happy Christmas and a good New Year, and to invite any member who wishes to do so to come along and enjoy a drink with me in the Mayor's Parlour. Thank you.
All right, please.
Minutes. No. I'll do them in a minute. Whoops.